I'd like to call the meeting of the Willits City Council to order for October 28th. Could we all rise and join Holly in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, Kathy.
Good evening.
Let's see who's here.
Okay. Councilmember Strange?
Yes.
Strong?
Yes.
Madrigal?
Yes.
Morenstein?
I'm here.
Mayor Burton?
Here. We don't have any substantial changes to our agenda this evening. We're going to pull the minutes of October 14th. The only change I plan on doing is rearranging the order of things slightly. We're going to do, in public matters, we're going to do item A, which is a presentation and discussion of the FEMA flood insurance map modification. And then we're going to recess as the city council and take on the discussion of the Citizen Planning Commission and discuss the item under the Planning Commission, which is a resolution regarding a use permit for John's place. So we will come back after that and have a discussion and direction regarding the city's top 5 economic goals and priorities. And hope you all would like to stick around and participate in that, but for those that have more pressing matters, that's the way we're going to do it. I think it'll suit the needs here a little better this evening. The first item, though, under our agenda is public communications. This is for anybody that would like to address the council or the community on issues or topics or thoughts, whatever, that are not on the agenda. No action will be taken. We can't really respond much to what your comments are, but you're welcome to step forward, introduce yourself, and have 3 minutes to make public comments on items not on the agenda. So I'm looking for anybody that wishes to do that now. And I see no one. Second, third, and last call. Okay, we're going to move on with our regular agenda item, which is under public matters, a presentation and discussion of the preliminary FEMA flood insurance rate maps, which reflect changes in special flood hazard areas within the city of Willits and the immediate surrounding area. Adrian, do you have an intro to this before we turn this over to John? Or?
Just briefly say that John Sherman, our building official, is, per our municipal code, is our floodplain administrator. He recently attended a pretty comprehensive session back east and got more familiar with his role as our floodplain administrator, and so he is here to present some preliminary maps that we received from FEMA that we want to introduce to the community. John?
Adrian, or maybe John can address it. I just wanted to make sure I and everybody else knows, what is the whole process?
Let's John, let's see, before we start with questions, let's take a presentation. Maybe we'll get that in the background, what this is. I agree, we need to know this.
Good evening, council members and members of the public. What I'm presenting, a couple of years ago, our city engineer noticed that there were some elevation differences between our existing FEMA flood maps and brought that to FEMA's attention. When FEMA got that information, they started looking at it, and they used something that is fairly recent for us, geopositional satellite information. And so these are the first digital maps we've ever had for the community. What they do is they identify the areas of the floodway, and the floodway is that area that contains the stream within its banks. And then the floodplain, which is the blue areas that you'll see here for a 100-year flood. And the brown areas here represent a 500-year flood. And what that means is essentially, there's a 1% chance of us having a 100-year flood every year. It doesn't mean it's only going to happen every 100 years. It may happen 2 or 3 years in a row and then not come back for another 100 years. But the point of these maps is to show that whether or not your properties are in the flood zone, and it gives you an opportunity to obtain federally subsidized flood insurance. And if you're within the flood zone and your property meets the requirements, then you're able to purchase federally subsidized flood insurance at a much reduced rate. And I can't really talk specific numbers, how much is your insurance policy going to cost, but my understanding is the federally subsidized flood insurance is about 1/3 of what the market rate flood insurance will cost you. The new revised maps, this doesn't mean that somebody's going to call you up and say you have to raise your house up, it's not high enough or anything like that. It really has to do with new construction or reconstruction, what's called substantial improvement. And substantial improvement means your property is going to be improved by more than 50% of its current value. And if you do that, then you're required to make changes to your property compliant with FEMA regulations, and that, again, gives you the opportunity to get this federally subsidized flood insurance. Now, I want to emphasize or really make this point clear. Nobody's going to call you and say, hey, you're now in the flood zone, you have to raise your house up a foot. If you were to come in with plans and say, I want to build a new house in this location, and that location is in the floodplain, well then, we're going to look at that. We're going to use these maps to determine what's called base flood elevation, or the 100-year flood elevation is. And we're going to require that you raise your house, the floor level of your house, 1 foot above that elevation. And the whole point here is to prevent extreme damage during flood events. These, as I say, are preliminary. There will be a 90-day appeal period for people to look at these maps, familiarize themselves with how they will affect their properties. And then there's a 6-month period after that where FEMA puts all the appeals together. They make the adjustments that are appropriate for the maps. And then a letter of determination. FEMA issues a letter of determination, and then these maps become official. Until then, the old maps are what controls what we do. But I want to point out, this is essentially the Mill Creek floodplain on the old maps. This is the Mill Creek floodplain on the new map. In areas of the city, there's considerably expanded areas of floodplain in here. The thing that struck me and got me really interested in digging into this map represents the changes from the old maps to the new maps. What you see in red is an expansion of the floodplain. What you see in green is a reduction of the floodplain. The thing that stood out to me really strongly is that all the red's in the city and all the greens in the wetlands. So we started looking at that, and recently we did a project to remove blockage underneath the Bronx Creek Bridge down here, just to allow that water to move out of the city a little better. But that's just a tool for us to use to look at maybe what can we do to help out. As I said before, nobody's going to call you and say, hey, now that the new maps have been adopted, you need to do this, do this, do this. On the other hand, these maps present an opportunity for you to take a look at it and if there's something in there that you disagree with, there's an appeal process that happens within this 90-day period. There's no emergency, nobody has to act right now. There's a 90-day appeal period, and then there's a 6-month period beyond that before they become final. And the whole point of those periods of time is for FEMA to get the input and adjust their maps and to make sure they're correct. And then they implement the maps, and from that point on, they become the controlling map, just as the one on the end is now. So,
John, could you clarify that this is FEMA is driving this process, correct?
oh yes.
As far as this 90-day period and then the 6-month period after that?
Yeah, and that's a federal standard.
And John, if we're going to talk about that, can you tell us when that 90-day period starts? Does it start tonight with the public?
It actually won't start until we have a public meeting, and we're still scheduling that meeting.
Okay, so that 90-day period is not even yet started.
No.
Oh, so this is not the public meeting, this is just an informational?
No, I'm just introducing the maps to the public so they can get involved and take a look, because it's their input that we need.
Right.
So are you more or less covered what you were going to cover? I don't want to short your...
No, for the most part, yes.
I'm going to have a couple questions, and I'll have some from the council. Is there a specific elevation that's uniform that causes you to be in the flood plain or the flood, or as you, in other words, can a landowner get a surveyor and survey the height of the level of if they're in the blue zone or in the red zone now? I guess the red zone is the change. So if they're in the red zone, is that to assume they're below 1,280 feet elevation or something?
Well, at that location, the elevation changes as you come down out
Right.
in the water course. So it's not the same everywhere.
That's my point.
But these maps identify what that is, and that combined with the flood insurance study that we have here that gives us profiles to work from, we can determine what that elevation is at that property.
So if a homeowner calls you and says, I own a house at 373 Mill Street, you can give him what FEMA declares that elevation to be, and
Yes.
and then if you can have it surveyed and determine that it's actually 4 feet higher from that than what their map is claiming that it is, measuring from a satellite 600 miles away, then you'd have, that would be the kind of correction you'd be looking to make clear.
Absolutely.
Is that right?
Absolutely. And even after the maps are adopted, that can be taken care of with a letter of map revision due to fill or elevation increase.
So I think another really common question that it's on everybody's minds here, I'm sure, is that there's going to be an assumption by many that this enhanced floodway is a result of the construction of the bypass.
No, they're not related, I don't think.
So,
This information was created independently from anything, and for the most part, it was created before the bypass was built.
okay, well, people can, I understand that. I wanted to have that clear. Whether people choose to all believe that or not, I think is maybe up for interpretation. It is extremely unfortunate
Yeah.
that they would produce a document like this at this particular time, and then say that there is no relationship. There will be time for public comment. I'm going to take comment from the council up here in a moment, and then we will open this up for questions that can be addressed from the community. So don't bother raising your hand yet. I will address you before long. The other thing I think that needs to be clarified is that, John, we at the city are not going to be going to homeowners and now saying, you're now in the red zone and you have to raise your house. But if you do have a mortgage on your property, you will be required, I believe, by the mortgage holder of that property to place flood insurance on that property. Is that your understanding?
Yes, that's my understanding of it.
So there is that insurance, if you own your property free and clear, but if you're with a private lender, that would not apply. But if you're with a commercial lender, I believe you would find that they will ask you to put that on, and then they will force place it on their property if you don't do it.
That's
So-
how the process works, so I
Yeah,
understand.
so there is impact to homeowners that have property in here, irregardless if they do home improvements to exceed 50%, or, to cause the city to become interested in the issue, so.
Yes, and if you're a homeowner and you decide to do the research, find out what your base flood elevation is, and raise your building up to meet the requirements, then you're going to be in compliance, and your rates from FEMA are going to be lower.
But if you raise your house up above that, I'm gonna call it 1,280 feet, just
Sure.
making up a number. I raise it up to 1,281, but I'm still in the red zone, will I still have the flood insurance placed on my property?
Yes.
Yeah, so that
Yes,
doesn't get
you'll
you
just get a
out-
better rate at it.
Yeah, okay. Those were some of my general questions to start it, and I'd look to see if there's questions from the council here. Again, there will be a public meeting on this issue where people can get up close and personal to these maps and find your property, and I find the maps that we've gotten, even the maps that I've looked at those before, really hard to, in the blue and in the red, it can be really hard to pick out streets and get yourself oriented to find out what side of the line you're on, so, but anyway.
Well, for that reason, we put these preliminary maps on the City of Willits website, and all you have to do, it's up there.
You can
right
just
there.
keep
All you
blowing
have
them
to
up.
do, go right under the council's picture, the very first thing you're gonna run into is maps. Just click on the map. And here it is.
Okay, well, good, thank you.
And
I was wondering why that
I
was a-
encourage you all.
Figured everybody wanted to see my
Go to our
picture.
website and look at these maps and find your property and orient yourself. I've been getting phone calls from people that are concerned that live up on Redwood Avenue. Basically, there's no concern up on Redwood Avenue. But that's what you need to do, is find your property on these maps, take a look at, find out what the condition is for your property.
Madge, I think you were the first.
Yeah, just, and you answered my question about the process. Where are we going from here? Would it be possible to sort of just orient those 4 different maps? What's direction, northwest, southwest, northeast?
North is always
North
top.
is at the top of the map.
I know, but they're all in a row. So where would they fit together?
That's east side.
Well, you can look and see some of the streets if you look here.
Well, I don't think.
Yeah, I think it's helpful.
You can do that, but I don't think we're going to have
Okay.
the time this evening for people, during our meeting, for people to really
This is-
look at these maps.
Well, and that's the point of putting them on our website, so
Good.
everybody has access to them. If you look at them, you have questions, give me a call. I'd be happy to work with all of you.
And they're
Thank you.
also available here at the city. If you don't have internet access, you can come down to the city and go upstairs and take a look at them.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions up here?
Yeah.
Yeah, Holly.
So, couple questions. So, the sort of forced insurance situation that you were referring to, that would be if you're in the flood plain, correct? Which is
Correct,
blue.
yes.
Or
Um,
red. Well,
well, blue.
red is
Well,
not
the
blue.
So,
red
red-
just indicates what's changed.
Right, but on the maps that we're looking at, those ones. So the brown, for lack of a better term, the brown area is
500.
flood,
500.
500-year flood.
floodway. No, floodplain.
Floodway, when you look at these maps, you'll see,
Some
for example,
hash.
it's hard to see, but
Yeah, the-
there's a striped area.
Red hash, that's,
Yeah, that's the floodway. And no development's allowed in the floodway at all.
Okay, so my question with that is, so say I wasn't in the floodway and now I am. So my property wasn't, maybe it was floodplain or not. I mean, one of the things that people should realize is that a lot has changed since these maps have been updated. My understanding is that the current library didn't exist when our current maps were done. The apartments across from the Recreation Grove had not been built. I mean, there was a lot of development that didn't exist
Yeah,
where the maps are
we
right
use
now.
currently were done in 2011.
Okay.
And actually, the library is somewhat
Yeah,
of an
that's-
island.
that's
They
later than I thought.
elevated the property before they built it, and it does have a certified floor level.
So if I was not in the floodway, which I was told floodway, think river bottom, you know.
Yeah.
And now I am, my house is built, but would I not be able to get insurance? I mean, you hear
No,
about some
no,
things where like you
no.
can't get it if you're in a bad enough situation.
No, you absolutely will, and if it was built to the current codes when it was built, then it's fine.
Okay.
Now, if you were, for example, going to remodel that house extensively, essentially what we'd ask you to do is raise it up above the flood level.
Even if you're in a flood,
Well,
Way.
if the floodway has moved and put your building in it, we're still going to treat it as if it's in the floodplain.
okay.
We can't say, take your building out of the floodway because
Right.
the floodway has moved. That's not how it works.
Has there been a major expansion of floodway?
Not really, there's not a whole lot of difference in the floodway, it's the
'Cause that's
floodplain.
generally
Yeah, once it
creek or-
jumps
yeah.
its banks and goes out, that's where the changes have been.
Yeah, because what's challenging is that the maps are for, you know, a 100-year or a 500-year flood, but our family has property in the, I guess, 100-year flood area, and it's flooding like every couple of years to every year. I mean, that's just the reality of what we're experiencing. No matter what the map says,
Yeah.
you know, you kind of have to be
Well,
prepared for that.
and it's a natural system. It changes over time, and that's why they revise these maps.
And I'm not sure about the bypass, because the bypass is in the drawings, you know, the footprint is in the drawings, so it wouldn't surprise me if they didn't include that somewhat in the calculations for these maps.
Oh, absolutely, they did.
Okay, so basically, we just want to clarify that the bypass did not cause these changes.
Absolutely
But it
not.
has been considered, because it's
Yes.
a big earthen
Yes,
berm.
absolutely.
Okay, good. I think that's all my questions.
Okay, Ron?
Yeah, on these elevations, I know Bruce threw out the number, 1,280 feet is just a number. But what is there a baseline number that puts you at the, how should I put it, at the top of the floodplain, at the flood level?
Yeah, that's called a base flood elevation.
Okay, and what is that?
And that elevation changes as you go downstream in the water courses. So, for example, the elevation here is going to be higher, excuse me for a moment. Let's say 1,346 feet, 1,333 feet. So it's just like you would expect water going down the
Yeah,
water
yeah.
course, it goes downhill.
So
It jumps the banks, that also follows the terrain.
So is there a number, I mean, because we see all of the elevation lines on these maps, and if you find your own property, you can sort of figure out, you know, what the elevation is at that point.
Right.
But is there a, let's call it a safe number, that if your elevation is above a certain amount, then, well, actually, I guess the colors would show that as well, wouldn't it? But I guess what I'm getting at is, let's say you have a property that's inside the floodplain on this map. And let's say at that point where your property is the flood, the base level, and correct me if I'm saying all these wrong, but the base level is, let's say, 1,320 feet.
Right.
And your property happens to be built on a hill and it's 1,340 feet. Now, even though you're located inside the floodplain, are you still
No.
in the floodplain?
That's what the appeal process is for, and that's what a letter of map revision is for.
Okay.
Because the scale of the maps don't allow them to, every little hill is represented. With that being said, also understand that you can see very clearly on these maps that the library, for example, has been elevated to 1 foot above base flood elevation. And that's what FEMA would like to see, is they would like to see the buildings have a foot, and that's what our ordinance requires, is that the buildings are built with a floor level 1 foot above base flood elevation. The point of that is it's not going to flood into your home in a 100-year flood.
Okay.
It might happen in a 500-year flood.
That depends on the color, though.
And it
that's on
doesn't
the map.
mean that if it's not on this map, you won't have flooding. There are places that we get flooding that are not on this map because they're not the result of a natural water course or
I
some
see.
other reason for the flood.
So, so John, here, my question. So, what changed here? Did they determine that 1,340 feet wasn't floodplain in 2011 and 1,340 feet is floodplain now, or did they have incorrect elevations? Are they correcting elevations, or did they change the floodplain, base floodplain height?
Both, just to make it more simple, both. And what they do is they do hydrological studies. And it tells them how much the floodway is able to transport and how much water is really expected and what the elevations on either side of the floodway are, how much that elevation is going to come up and how much that's going to spread. As far as changing, I think it's part of the natural process that things
Oh, well, no, there's no
change.
doubt, but, you know, it also, I think a substantial argument could be made is that it certainly, not only has the city created floodplain, you know, taken upland and made it wetland. Caltrans has taken a tremendous amount of land and is constructing wetlands of it, which I would logically extend that to think that that would be a flooding release, not a flooding impediment. I mean, it would give that water more places to go within that elevation profile. And so it would allow the valley to store more flood water and actually lower the flood.
But one of the controlling issues here is how do we convey that water into those areas that you're talking about?
Well,
Right
I mean,
now, we
that's the
seem to
whole-
have a choke point here.
There certainly is choke points, you know, all along the deal. But that, that is certainly the intent of those mitigation projects, is to remove those choke points and allow that water to get out into those properties so that it can flood.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think we might, you know, I think it's an avenue of interpretation
The
for
engineering
us to.
department and I are already looking at what kind of opportunities do we have to enhance the flooding in the wetlands area and reduce the flooding in the city.
Well, that's what I mean, and that's what I'm saying, is that there are substantial projects underway to increase flooding in the floodway.
Yeah,
In those brown areas that are the 500-year deals out in that area of the valley, there's been a substantial amount of money being spent to turn those into blue areas.
and just recently, our Public Works Department did a project underneath the Broadus Creek Bridge here that at the point was almost 50% blocked by silt and gravel. Now that gravel's been removed, so the ability to convey the water into the wetlands is enhanced by removing those blockages. And we're looking at other areas
Yeah,
as
well,
well.
I think we need to look at it all the way out to Outlet Creek, I mean, all the way up to.
I have
Just what we're looking at.
I have one more question too. And I know that we want to keep going because we have other stuff tonight, but can I just clarify that the blue is floodplain
Yes.
and brown is what?
The brown is also floodplain, but it's a 500-year
Okay.
floodplain. What FEMA uses as a controlling factor is the 100-year floodplain, and that's what they call the base flood elevation. And in the blue areas, when you see the
Okay.
lines with elevation, that's what they're predicting.
And then the red hash marks are the floodway.
Yeah.
And so really, because I was wondering this when we were bringing it up, because this is just for information for the council and the public, and we're going to have another one. But just as a property owner, getting back to what Bruce said, pretty much your only option is to find your individual property. The only way to change it is to get real data, right? I mean, because we're not hydrologists or engineers or.
Exactly.
But if you're like, I'm pretty sure my house is up, you could
Well, then
invest in
You need to get a
that?
licensed surveyor to come out and make that information acceptable to FEMA.
I think that,
Yeah.
that's what I was bringing up earlier. The city's role may be to look at what do these mitigation projects, you know, as a group effort or a city effort to make sure that the mitigation projects were reflected in the creation of this deal, and if they could add essentially benefit to the city by those being here, we want to make sure that we've been credited for them wrong.
Yeah, I'm looking at the southeast corner of the map here, and that's, I guess that's
Which
the
one?
last one on the left. And this is down where the hospital's located.
Right.
And I noticed that a large part of this map is in unincorporated area, and it's gray, no color. And there's part of it that's in the city, like where the hospital is located, that is also gray. So I guess my question is, was this left gray because there is no floodway or floodplain issues, or
Yes.
because it's not part of the city?
No, it's, the map revision is a county-wide map revision. The city of Willits maps are these ones that are up here, but I think there's something like 22 maps that
Okay.
cover the county. The area that doesn't have color means it's outside the floodplain.
So I noticed that, again, looking at the hospital, I'm staring right at the footprint here, and it's next to the Hale Creek, and Hale Creek is shown in blue as a floodway. And it goes out to a certain distance, and then there's a greater distance that is gray. Can we go to the bank with these?
Absolutely.
Okay,
That's the whole purpose of them, is
Okay.
that you can go to the bank.
so it's not gonna flood the hospital?
And down at the south end of town, Hale Creek in particular is a very deep channel.
it
There's
has
not
a
lot of
natural-
overflow outside
Yeah.
of the channel.
That's what, yeah.
Once it gets down here and hooks up with Bechtel Creek, everything changes. The whole east side, if you were to go to the end of East San Francisco Avenue, basically everything inside the city from that point on is in the floodplain.
Yeah.
John, there, one last thing here in your agenda summary. And just to read it here, FEMA issued a preliminary FIS and set of revised firms for all of Mendocino County, including the city of Willits. So the city of Ukiah, city of Fort Bragg, city of Point Arena, they've all got new, it wasn't just Willits that got
No.
a new flood hazard rating or whatever, however
Right.
you want it. So Ukiah's got a new set of FEMA flood maps that they're reviewing now too.
Yeah, the entire county.
The entire county was reevaluated for its floodway impact.
I understand one of the factors here is that we do have GIS information now, and we never have before. And that's common throughout the county at this point.
Okay, I think I want to open it up and see if anybody from the community would like to address this topic. Like I say, there will be a specific
Public
public
meeting.
forum on this where you can actually So I'd like the questions to be somewhat general in nature, because we're probably not going to have, specific information on your property, but ma'am, can you please stand and come speak at the?
Sure.
That microphone goes to the television audience and not so much for in here.
Isn't the land...
Could you introduce yourself,
My
please?
name's Kathleen Middleton.
Thank you.
I've lived in Willits for probably 27, 28 years.
Good.
Isn't it also true that the Remco land is where they built the hospital out there off of East Hill? And doesn't the gas line also run through there, and aren't the pipes flaring out through there?
Well-
And there's a gas leaks, and that may be of some concern also, that has something to do with the new flood lines?
I don't think it does with the new flood lines. You are right that somewhere in the vicinity out there, the gas line does run. I know where it is at one point, close to the bridge of East Hill Road and Bechtel Road. Remco was never out on that property.
In the early 90s, I moved here from Fort Bragg, and I bought a mobile home out in the valley. And I noticed that there was foam and icky green stuff coming up from the ground. And I investigated it, and I took pictures, and I sent them off to Washington, and I got some results. And they found that Remco had dumped barrels and barrels of stuff out there, and I still see it everywhere.
Well,
It's not cleaned up. and
Okay,
it's
if
all
you'd like to
along the
address
flood
that
line.
topic, I suggest you come and we're welcome to talk about that in public communications. We're trying to focus on the floodplain maps here this evening.
Okay, well,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You bet. Bear?
Yeah, I'm Bernard Kameroff, and my question is not so much of whether we have to deal with what FEMA now says is a floodplain, but whether their information is valid at all. And if it isn't, whether we can challenge it, because there are houses that have been standing here through 100-year floods that, to my knowledge, have never flooded. The areas very close up around Main Street that are now in the floodplain, I've talked to people who were here in '64 when the big floods hit, and the water never came anywhere near it. And I don't know, unless things have actually changed in the valley dramatically to raise the level of the water, I don't understand how FEMA can decide out of the blue that the places that have never flooded in history, as far as people know here, suddenly are prone to be flooding, and whether this is something that the city of Willits can challenge and say that their figures are absolutely wrong.
That's what the appeal period is for. Essentially, if you feel that their figures are wrong, then we need to demonstrate that they're wrong.
Well, it would be based on historical, what actually happened.
Well, I don't know that we can use that because the conditions change. You continue to change. I mean, if FEMA did a map 100 years ago and you looked at it, it wouldn't bear a whole lot of resemblance to what we're looking at today.
So everything's risen up.
Yeah, but that's the point of this period,
Sunk.
is to give everyone a chance to take a look and find out if you think they're accurate or not. If they're not accurate, that's the point of the appeal period, is to challenge them.
How would we do that?
Well, there will be a public meeting, and there is the city's going to be looking closely at this because it has a fair number of properties its own that are impacted by this. Yeah, but it's in the community's interest. Ma'am, right, the number right there.
My name is Sabrina Rodriguez, and my question is, can you tell me how this will impact our property values for now? And then if these maps are approved, what kind of time frame are we talking about? Are we talking about the winter of 2016? Are we talking about summer? I mean, do you have a...
Yeah, we're talking about summer to fall of 2016.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Sabrina. So, April?
April Twaddell. It's my understanding that all flood insurance is federal. You can go to your local insurance company, and they will contact the feds
Okay.
on your behalf. It's all federal. I don't know if there's any reduction.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Anybody else this evening? There's no action we're taking on this item this evening. This is just an introductory. We sent John back east to get up to speed on this, and we're going to be putting some time in on this issue in the coming 90 days, or 90 days starting before too awful long. So, okay, thank you. We're going to move along. And as I said a little bit ago, what I'd like to do, or I'm going to do, is there's strong objection by people that are so anxious to know of the city's top 5 economic development goals. I'm going to recess as the city council and convene as the city planning commission. For those that are used to communities that have a separate planning commission and a city council, here at the city of Willits, we don't work that way. The council sits as the planning commission. So I'm going to hereby bring the meeting of the Willits Planning Commission to order, and the item up is a discussion and possible action to adopt a resolution regarding use permit U-15-01 for Daniel Chesser. And with us we have Dusty Dooley, who is the city planner.
Contract planner.
And we will, I think he has a presentation to be made. This was heard once before, a month or two ago. The applicants brought back a different application, and I'd like Dusty to explain that. And then we will take comments, have questions of him and comments from him, and then we will have a public hearing on this issue.
Thank you. Yeah, Dusty Dooley, contract planner for the city. This is use permit U-15-01 for Daniel and Jeannie Chesser to establish, there we go, a full-service bar within a 1,800 square foot vacant building on a 1.5 acre property. You are correct. This matter, a very similar use permit was requested by the Chessers and came before the commission a number of months ago. That permit was ultimately denied by the planning commission, and the applicant has chosen to slightly revise their project and bring this matter back in front of the commission for consideration again. As I'm going through the presentation, you'll recognize these slides from last time. I do recognize some faces in the audience that weren't here last time, so I would like to quickly go through this again. This is a map showing the city limits. This property is located towards the north end of town on the east side of US 101, about 1/10 of a mile south of its intersection with Sherwood Road. This slide is showing the subject parcel along with the surrounding zonings in the area. So you can see the properties in the C1, the commercial district. Not too farther north, we have the public facility zone to recognize the high school. Then you have some industrial lands to the east, and then quite a bit of residential in the area to the west and to the southeast that you can see on the map there. This is an aerial photo showing the approximate boundaries of the property line. I'm sorry I don't have a pointer on me, but the building to the, you can see 101 running to the, thank you, Commissioner Ornstein. You can see 101 running north-south to the west of the property. That building closest to the western property line is the subject building that the applicant's hoping to turn into a full-service bar. And again, this is in recognition that John's Place previously operated on a property about a half mile to the southeast of this site, and unfortunately, due to a fire, they're looking to reestablish their bar at an alternative location, at least on a temporary basis. This is that subject building. You can see a little piece of 101 to the west there. I wanted to point out that the east side of the building, that's the the front door, the entrance to the bar. So it's on the opposite side of 101, and that's certainly where you might expect folks to congregate outside and chat. This is a site map that was provided by the applicant. It does show the proposed building, the parking area. There are some other buildings on the property, however, those will not be used to support this project. You can see the applicant has shown where they're proposing to put a fence up to kind of keep folks congregated on the western portion of the property, that area closest to the bar. There are some existing fences, and some of it's newly proposed fencing. In evaluating this project, staff did identify a number of potential issues, some related to traffic, ingress, egress, noise, land use compatibility, and police services, and I'll try to talk briefly on those. This is a photo showing northbound 101. You can see the entrance to this property in front of the building here. That will be the ingress, entrance, exit for the property. One of the issues that staff recognized was there can be some difficulty with maneuvering out of this property during certain times of the day. This is a photo that I took in the afternoon some months back, and it shows a number of vehicles lining up waiting to take a left turn onto Sherwood Road and head up to Brook Trails. The comments that I made at the previous meeting, I'll repeat them, but essentially what staff provided in the report in our initial study and our analysis is this isn't and I say this having spent some time here. I do live in Brook Trails, but this isn't a situation that's too uncommon to Willits. Unfortunately, many folks have sort of adapted to safely driving in these conditions. Certainly making a right-hand turn, it does not appear to be a safety hazard, although folks will need to be careful when making a left-hand turn out of this site at certain times of the day. Regarding noise, there has been a change to the project request. The applicant's no longer requesting to have amplified music. Certainly we recognize that there's a jukebox, the radio might be on in the bar, but by not having live events, it certainly reduces the opportunity to cause noise impacts to the neighborhood. And again, as I'm pointing out these changes, these were identified by the applicant, likely in response to the last public hearing that we had, where we got comments from the commissioners as well as members of the public. They've opted to not have live music at this facility to help minimize noise impacts. We have a few conditions in the report, conditions numbers 4 through 6. Those are found in your staff report. We are recommending that windows and doors be closed when noise is impacting or has the potential to impact the surrounding area. And we've asked that the building be upgraded if necessary to include ventilation to keep folks comfortable so that there isn't that temptation to open the doors and potentially increase noise impacts in the area. Again, recognizing that hours of operation are requested from 9 a.m. to 2 a.m. each day. I mentioned that land use compatibility was a potential impact. What this slide is attempting to show is sort of the nearby sensitive receptors in relation to the project site. I don't know if I can see here, but so here's the property that we're talking about here. The yellow is indicating public facilities. So this is the high school, Willits High School. This property, although zoned industrial, I did highlight in yellow as it's my understanding that this property is used by the ag department at times for the high school. And then the narrower yellow area on the west side of 101 is recognizing Sanhedrin High School, continuation school. The blue is the closest residential properties to the site. Again, recognizing that those are our most sensitive receptors when it comes to noise. I believe this identifies all those residents within at least 300 feet of the property lines. Again, getting kind of back to the land use compatibility part of it, the green highlighted properties are in recognition of our public park across the street from us here, as well as the church on the corner. I think I mentioned at the last meeting that our code does not prescribe minimum separation distances between, a bar and other potentially conflicting land uses. And we certainly heard a number of comments from our public at the last use permit hearing. Lastly was police services. Staff recognizes that these types of land uses can result in increased calls for service from our police department. We've identified a number of conditions to try to help minimize those calls, as well as to increase the safety of the patrons that may attend John's place. For instance, we're asking that lighting be installed in the parking lot, not so bright that it's causing a glare to the off-site residents, but light enough that someone can feel safe going to their parked car at night. We're also asking that video cameras be installed at the site, so if we do have issues, our police department is able to review those videos and act accordingly. And there were a few other changes that the applicant identified and completed to amend their project request. And those were, I mentioned, the prohibition on amplified music. The other one was that they're agreeable to not having any advertising on the outside of the building that would reference it as a bar. Certainly, us locals are going to recognize what it is if it was to be established at this site, but maybe that person that's just passing through would not be aware of the true use of the property. So, for instance, a sign saying John's Place, staff's looking at that as being fine. A Budweiser emblem, that's again kind of pointing to a bar, so that would be prohibited. The other condition is they're asking for a 2-year permit. Before they were asking for an indefinite use permit to run with the land. This time they're asking for that permit to be granted by the commission for a 2-year period to recognize the temporary use of the property. Again, it's staff's understanding that they have a desire to move back to their previous location once that site's constructed and made ready again. So with that, I'll try to answer any questions folks might have.
Do we have any questions up here?
I do.
Yeah.
All right. Dusty, I think I may have asked this question before and it was answered, but I'm going to ask it again for recollection.
Understood.
Right now, there is a liquor license that's assigned to the Commercial Street property under the name of Chesser. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
Or how is that structured? It's on their name at an address?
That's my understanding. The applicant may be able to provide a more definitive answer. But yeah, they did have a liquor license at their previous location, and they have a certain time frame in which to reestablish that license at a different location.
Okay, and as our planning guy here, I'm going to ask you as the professional. So what's being asked here is for the city to approve the transfer, subject to ABC final approval, is to approve the transfer from the Commercial Street property to this Main Street property, correct?
I don't think so.
That's not our role as the city. Our role is to, basically the decision before us is should we allow them to establish a bar at this location?
Okay,
is
so
that appropriate? They would then need to go to ABC and request the transference of that liquor license.
Okay, so I probably misstated it then. So basically, let me rephrase it. So the action that's being sought is to transfer the liquor license from the Commercial Street property to the Main Street property.
No. It's a conditional use permit.
No, wait a minute, I'm asking him.
Correct. ABC is not going to act on their request to transfer the license until they have the entitlement from the local government.
I understand that.
Right.
But when it gets down to the actual transfer of the liquor license, the action that could be taken would be that the license would be transferred under the same name of the same owners from one property to the other property, correct?
That's my understanding, correct.
ABC would be.
ABC, yeah, I understand. ABC is the one who...
I'm assuming, right, when you ask that question,
Yeah,
you're referring to
okay.
ABC.
All right, so now, what would, the condition then would be that this Main Street property now has a liquor license attached to it, and the Commercial Street property does not.
Correct.
Okay, so there's not 2 liquor licenses in existence, there's only the one.
That's my understanding.
I hate when you say that. I was hoping for a more definite answer. Okay,
We're not
well, that's fine,
ABC.
okay, all right, so let me move on. So you said that the application is for a 2-year period. And when would the 2-year period, when would that clock start?
From tonight, if it was approved.
Okay, and at the end of 2 years, if this new building is not constructed on Commercial Street, what happens?
They would have an opportunity to come in and ask the commission to renew the permit.
And if that doesn't happen, if it's not renewed, then what?
Then they no longer can have that land use at that property.
Okay. Just for a little bit of housekeeping, as I read through this, I noticed a slight discrepancy in the description. Under key issue number 2, land use compatibility, it mentions that the closest business that sells liquor is the Tower Mart, 1,000 feet to the northwest. Then, on page, you have a copy of the thing there? This is on page 3. You see where okay. Then on page 6, under ingress and egress, it says in the second sentence, the driveway is approximately 260 feet south of the Sherwood Road and 101 intersection. So which one is it? Because the Tower Mart is at the intersection. So it's either 260 feet or 1,000 feet, which...
It's 260.
I'm guessing it's 260, yeah, but I just wanted to...
Is it?
That is a discrepancy, I mean, whether or not it means anything is irrelevant, but I just love things to fall into place.
It's pretty. We have,
I thank you for reading my staff report.
Oh, I read it, yeah. Wait a minute, I'm not,
well, as you're collecting your thoughts, I'll take a question from
Okay.
somebody else. Anybody else got a question? The one, we talked about this a little bit the other day, and I want to just bring it up for clarification. In your staff report for the use permit under fire protection, and John, you're still here too. What it states is all buildings shall meet all pertinent building and fire codes for sprinkler systems, adequate water for fire flows, and provisions for fire prevention. But that is not saying that they have to put in sprinklers in that building.
That's correct.
Okay. Because I was working from memory the other day, and I interpreted that it would need sprinklers, but it does not need sprinklers. Okay, I just wanted to be clear.
It is a good.
I think it means if sprinklers are required, they're required to do that.
Right,
But in this case, sprinklers are not.
okay.
Just a couple questions, and I'm certainly interested to hear what the public thinks, especially since I was on the losing side of the last permit, which, I can reiterate my reasons for that later, but I have received a lot of feedback in the interim between then and now, on both sides, really, about this. But one of my questions is, the Veterans Building, is that a public facilities designation? You know what I'm talking about? The building
Yeah,
just to the
north of this side.
Yeah.
It certainly is a public facility type of use. What I'm trying to do here is pull up the zoning map and give you an answer on what the zoning for that property is.
And the other thing that I'm wondering about, so that's included in that, okay. And my other question, if you can help me remember, when Vassar's was Vassar's, did they serve beer and wine?
Sure.
They did? Okay.
Yes.
Signs in the windows.
They didn't. Maybe you were too young.
I got pizza there. I mean, I got pizza, not beer. I was too young when I was eating there. Okay, so they had a beer and wine license.
They did not serve liquor, but they did
Right.
have the opportunity to serve beer.
Okay, and the Tower Mart does sell liquor.
They did.
Okay.
Lottery tickets.
Yeah. Yeah.
Excuse me, we'll have public comment.
I just want to clarify that. So, yeah, I'll look forward to hearing the public comment on this one.
Yeah, I think, it seems like you do. So I'll open up the public hearing for comment on this item. And try and keep your comments to 3 minutes. There is a little light on your dashboard up there, and I will prompt you when you get close to it. And, you know, if you have, I think we got plenty of time here to take care of everybody, but if you start repeating what's already been told, I might ask you to wrap it up a little quicker. But please introduce yourself and.
Yes, my name is Shelley Revling, and I'm here to read Dan and Jeannie. Jeannie is sick.
Okay.
Jeannie Chesler, and Dan's here, and he has had a stroke and stuff. So I'm reading their letter that they have written to you. And it says, Dear City Council members, there are a few issues brought up at a previous meeting which we were unable to respond to at that time. We feel many of the citizens' concerns can be migrated and would appreciate the opportunity to address them tonight. The school seems to be the biggest issue, and we would like to tell you our experience with the Willits Charter School. While looking for a location for the school, the committee sought us out as we were the largest, most affordable place in town for their needs. We agreed to let them remodel and had a positive relationship with them for several years until they outgrew the space and moved to a larger facility. We never had an issue with the children who walked past our doors every day on their way to the store. When the preschool rented the space, the owner knew that there was a bar next door and apparently thought it was acceptable at the time. She said Dan worked with her on the noise level of the jukebox, and that was her main complaint. The trash behind the bar, beyond her fenced yard, and within the trash pickup area for the store, local and ABC ordinances prohibit open containers leaving the bar, so any bottles strewn outside did not come from the bar. Dan spent years of his life trying to keep things swept and clean. Our presence on the new property will surely stop the homeless from camping and the possibility of school kids loitering as they pass by. We all know how traffic through town is and has been for many years a nightmare. One consideration, however, is that all customers will not be coming and going at the same time, and that they will adjust to the peak times of traffic conditions in the area. We welcome the police drive-through and even walk-through that we have experienced in the past. Many local businesses have off-street parking, and the authorities expect to police them in this way. We are willing to forego live music for the duration of the permit and to carefully monitor the noise level. We don't believe the sound of the jukebox and karaoke could possibly carry beyond a limited area or be noisier than the convenience store on the corner. We are willing to do whatever it is necessary to migrate any real problems that could arise. We also have a limited to only 49-person occupancy by the fire district rules. It was mentioned that a town may be judged by the number of bars, so perhaps we could eliminate signage that refers directly to the alcohol sales. We would just need a sign that says John's Place so that all the locals know where it is. We also have a banner that says Dan's Back, which we used when we first leased the old building. We would be sufficient to let our customers know what is happening. Please keep in mind that this is not a new bar, but one of the 3 that has been in business for many years. We are not adding another watering hole. We are just trying to stay in business, as anyone who has experienced such a calamity would do. Perhaps a limited permit would alleviate the anxiety of some, and with a 2-year permit to be readdressed in the event of the new building at the new location would be delayed on the building processes. We have searched for other locations, but run into schools and residents all over town. This location seems to come closest to meeting our needs with the least problems for the neighbors. We hope you will consider these specific issues and give us an opportunity to stay in business. We will continue to pay taxes and licenses and fees to the city, the state, and the federal government. John employs up to 6 bartenders who also pay their taxes, buy groceries, and live and ultimately support the businesses and services in our town.
Good job. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I see you have backup.
I have a tale. My name is Robert Chavez. I'm the principal of Willits High School and Sanhedrin High School. There's actually 2 high schools in the location. And although I do appreciate our speaker who just spoke on behalf of the establishment, and I understand their needs and all the commercial needs of Willits City. However, my charge are the students, our children of Willits High School. And the establishment is very close to the high school and even more closer to Sanhedrin High School. So on that part, what we have is an establishment that is a bar, and it draws patrons who are there for a certain type of recreation, let's say. And I have students who can be as late as 12:30 in the evening after a dance that may walk down Main Street and would have to pass this establishment. I understand that there are a number of conditions that they have placed on themselves in regards to noise and in regards to signage, if you will. However, one thing that they have no control over are the patrons. And so the patrons in the parking lot, the patrons that are visiting the bar, and as our young ladies and young men pass the bar, even though with best intentions, they would not be able to control their patrons. And I, as the principal and having charge of these children, I'm very much concerned about the modeling that may be happening in the parking lot, in and around the establishment, as our young ladies and young men either leaving for basketball practice or a dance or whatever evening activity may observe as they're passing the establishment. Our children are the foundation of Willits City, and if we do not set a good example, if we do not model what is expected, and if they're constantly viewing recreational activity that is not at their age level, it may actually hurt our children. It may actually hurt the future of Willits. And so please, as you make your decision, please keep the children in the foremost of your thoughts as you make this decision. Thank you very much, most honorable council men and women. Thank you. Oh, and thank you, ladies, for supporting your daddy.
I'm embarrassed to ask this question, but I don't know anymore. Does Willits still have an open campus for lunch?
Willits High School does have open campus for our juniors and seniors. However, freshmen and sophomores is closed.
And how long do they have for that?
Just a little over 30 minutes. So
thank you.
It's about 30 minutes. Yes. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. No, I got Pat right now. I see you.
I'm Patricia Johnson, and I am the superintendent for Willits Unified School District, and I appreciate the comments that have been made on this topic, and thank you, council members, for this time. I understand that you're in receipt of a letter that came from the district and was signed by the district as well as by all 5 of our elected board members. I want to reiterate some of the points that Mr. Chavez just made, and one of the key points, Mayor Burton, was that we do have an open campus for a good number of our students. The student population between the 2 schools is about 450 students, so that's a significant number of young people that would have some exposure to this establishment on a regular basis. The additional traffic, the consumption of alcohol, and loitering of any patrons would be detrimental to the academic environment at our school site. The other consideration is, as Mr. Chavez pointed out, many times we run activities on our campus late into the evening. Football season easily goes till 10 o'clock every Friday night whenever we have a game, basketball, volleyball, all the rest of our sporting events. And the fact that our students, our campus, as you know, is pretty wide open. Anybody can flow into those events and flow out. And so the concern of having anyone participating in those activities that may come from that establishment may be detrimental to the safety of our campus. So I would like for the board members to please consider all of these considerations. The other thing is those sporting events and after-school activities are really family events. If you've attended any of them, it's not just our students and their parents, but it is families and it's generations of families in this community. And so anything that would deter from that family atmosphere is of concern to the district. So I thank you for your time tonight, and I hope you will consider those elements as you vote on this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The young lady in the red, I'd prefer if we didn't, yes, ma'am. Keep the applause to a minimum. This isn't a popularity contest.
I'm Patsy Nana, and I'm one of the property owners. And in the beginning of May, Dan and Jeannie Chester started trying to reopen John's Place on our property at 151 North Main Street. It has now been 5+ months, and we're still at a standstill over it. Next month, on November the 14th, it will be a year since they had their place burned down, which was no fault of their own. I feel it's about time to let them get back to work and their employees, don't you? Do you know now 5 days a week some of our children walk past or go into a business that sells or serves liquor when they're walking to school or home? Just walking from the post office to school, they pass 10 businesses that have liquor on Main Street alone. Also, all these doors to these businesses face Main Street. As for John's Place, their front door will not be facing Main Street. Just think of all the revenue our city has lost over this matter. But the concern about the children walking in front of the bar and after their school activities at late at night, you know, they pass several bars a lot of times when they're walking home late at night. And you go by Al's Red Room or one of the other ones, there's people out there talking at the pub, different places. They're out there talking and socializing and smoking and so forth, and those kids walk right past them also. So it's not our people, from what I understand that Dan and Judy, I didn't mean Judy, I mean Jeannie, told us, is that their people will be out the other way facing, and the children would actually have to walk up and really look, more or less, because we don't even have windows that are facing out on the street, other than the round one, which is not on facing the street, it's on the side. And so I don't see where it could be that big of a problem, since our children are already passing 10 businesses that serve or sell liquor. So thank you very much. But it'd be nice to see some revenue get back in the town and to let them get back to business, because they've been out of business for almost a year now. Thank you.
Thank you. You have somebody else? I see the young lady in the back here, and then the gentleman in the back.
Hello, my name is Nancy Villegas. I'm a member of the Youth Advocates and a junior at Willits High School. I'd like to thank the council, first of all, for coming to meetings and events that we attend, and thank you for fixing the roads, Della and Franklin. We really appreciate it. We are here today because the Teachers Association has reached out to us and informed that John's Place is trying to open up at this old Sun Cycle building. As a student at Willits High School, I don't really agree with the decision of having John's Place move so close to Willits High School, and I've heard many reasons why it's good and why it's not good, but this is my reason. Like the ABC, the Alcohol Beverage Control, says, the law says ABC may deny any retail license located within at least 600 feet of schools, public playgrounds, and nonprofit youth facilities. The proposed location is 226 feet from the high school and across from Sanhedrin. That alone should be a good reason to deny it. And a personal kind of feeling for me would be I'd be scared and intimidated to walk by the bar, because the type of crowd that the bar may attract would make me feel kind of uncomfortable, and I would also feel unsafe.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Cole Faraday, and as a 7th grader of Bechtel Grove Middle School, I do not think that John's Place should move or open in the old Sun Cycle Center. One of the reasons that they should not move into there is that a lot of the high schoolers will be able to get alcohol. Another reason that would be for like night rallies such as school dances and football games and concerts. I would be really scared to walk by a bar late night after a game or dance. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Zoe Martinez, and I'm a senior at Willits High School. I'm here to regard the issue of John's Place being located at the old Sun Cycle building. Especially here in the fall at the Willits High School, they always have night rallies, they have night dances, especially since it's getting in towards the end of this fall, I believe. And so they'll start bringing in basketball and all these type of events that take place about 7 or 8 at night. And a lot of the time, the students like to go and just walk home after school, but my issue is if you're walking home at night, would there be a lot of crowding in front of the bar, or on the sides of the bar, especially since the bar would be located behind or near the ag farm. So there would be many ways. Thank you.
So, my name is Karina and I'm a 7th grader at Bechtel Girl Middle School. I'm not agreeing with having John's Place moving into Sun's Place because I think it is too close to the high school. High schoolers can shoulder tap by getting other people that are old enough to get alcohol for them, which is not appropriate for the reason of teenagers being able to drink. Also, people who start drinking before 15 years are 5 times more likely to have more problems later in life. I don't want them to move in because teenagers will find a way to get alcohol. Teenagers don't really care about laws and they will get what they want. I read a paper and realized that if you start drinking at a young age, there's a higher risk of wanting to kill yourself. The earlier you drink, the more problems there is. I do not think having a bar next to a high school is good for the community.
Thank you. Gentleman in the back.
Hi, I'm John Haschak, and I teach at Blosser Lane Elementary School. I am the president of the Willits Teachers Association, 106 members, and we voted unanimously to come out against the licensing of John's Place near the high school and next across the street from Sanhedrin Continuation School. Two of the big reasons that I see are that you have hundreds of kids who walk along that street and they go right, you can see them before school, you can see them at lunch, you can see them right after school, you can see them into the evening and way into the night when there's a Friday night activity. And to have those kids walking along and then, like Mr. Chavez said, you don't have control of the patrons and where they might be hanging out, and it wouldn't take long for people to realize that there are a lot of teenage girls and boys walking along that street. It presents a real safety problem for everyone. The other issue is that people will be egressing from the bar out onto the street, and who knows how many cocktails or whatever they've had, and they could be driving out with all the traffic that was noted. You have these students walking by there too, and that seems like a real bad situation for the safety of our students. And as a parent of 2 kids who go to the high school, one daughter who is 17 and who often walks along that path to get home, it does not seem like a good idea, and I would really not like to see it personally too. So. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, right here.
Hi, I'm Julie. I'm the manager of John's Place, and there's no windows, there's no doors, there's nothing on Main Street. They'd have to physically come around, look through windows, and as a manager, I would not let that happen. Our bartenders are not going to let that happen. We all know what we have to do. We just need a place to do it. So, that's what I gotta say. You know, they walk past there on commercial, probably more. You know, they had a liquor store. We're not gonna serve shots outside to kids, I guarantee it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike?
Yes, I know some of them on the board as a disclaimer. They're my friends, and I know them from Rotary. But I guess we're at odds. Hi, my name is Mike Tobin. I'm a local. I serve my country here. I serve my community here as a sheriff deputy. I'm part of the Sheriff's Activities League. I'm in favor of John's Place being wherever John's Place wants to be. That's a Vietnam or a World War II vet, 80-some years old, had his bar over there. We let it burn down. We let crazy people go there. Our police didn't do anything. Our fire department had to stand by while they had a gun. His business was taken from him. He's not asking for a new business. He's asking to move his old business. Why we're even here, I don't know. I've heard all due respect to these young people who are kind of misinformed about things. Whoever did that, that's really sad too. Most juvenile parties are in people's homes. They're out on Tom Kai Road. They're at James Creek Bridge. They are not inside of our bars or our liquor establishments. If a child is going to go buy liquor from somebody, they usually find a transient or I'm shaking. This is just craziness. When we're going to grow up, I don't know. Transients will buy liquor for those kids at that liquor store with signs bigger than that TV that say 12-pack for $6.99. You can go there right, we can all take a field trip, walk across the street, and you'll see a big red sign that says liquor. It doesn't say Tower Mart. It doesn't say Mart. It says liquor. The Mart part is burned out. And that's open all night till 11 o'clock at night. These kids walk by day in and day out. When they go to buy a burger or a burrito or a pack of chips or whatever, you got to walk between the wine section, which is great because Mendocino County does what? Sell wine, that's what we do. To the liquor counter, it's huge. I mean, it's bigger than a bar. There's cigarettes, lottery, and some guy there selling them their burrito. Okay? Although we allow 2 in the store. Why? Because juveniles steal, that's why. That's why they're allowed 2 in the store, because there's 3 and they can't watch them. I'd be more worried about the patrons of the bar being upset. You can step out there almost any time of the day and see Sanhedrin students smoking weed and cigarettes and stuff in the Vassar parking lot. You'll find that Willits High School kids over on the veterans steps smashing out their cigarettes and weed and stuff. And I've seen it as a deputy. In the morning, drive by 7 o'clock in the morning, you'll see them standing out there. You guys need to worry. Most people are attacked by young people. They're not attacked by old people. There's a reversal going on here I don't even quite get. As far as walking through town and seeing what's going on, Diggers is next, right across the street or kitty corner to a daycare. Al's place is there. Full-blown windows the size of that TV right there. As she said, doors facing the street, music blaring, things going on. I DJ. I know about it. I know about the amplified sound. I know what they're talking about. That's fine. When I was a deputy driving around, they were complaining about the high school noise. They were complaining about the parking, the traffic, the kids in the streets, the people walking around and loitering. They were complaining about the noise going up from the football games and stuff into the mountainsides and into brook trails. Right? It wasn't the bar that was getting called in on. It was the high school. Who built a high school on a highway to start with? I don't know. That happened probably before I was born. But they did. They built a high school on a freeway or a highway, as you may want to call it. So there's cars, traffic, trucks, all kinds of stuff going on down that end of town. All of you were, I guess, children at one time, 15 years old, right?
No.
Never mind. Nobody ever called a 15-year-old a child. They're teenagers, they're young adults, they're getting ready to go in the military, they're getting ready to go to college, they got part-time jobs, they're doing prep courses for college. Now all of a sudden they're children? 13 years old, I knew what a bar was. At 13 years old, I was cutting grapes.
Start to wrap it up.
Okay, well, 13 years old, I was cutting grapes up in Calpella because this is a wine country. That's what you do when you're 13 years olds around here. You cut grapes. So there's liquor stores across there, the veterans store, and probably the biggest bar in town is right here next to us. Almost every weekend there is some kind of event going on here with the Lions Club or somebody is selling alcohol for some nonprofit group who gives money back to the school or to the local parks and recreation or whatever. And most of the ones, I've been to fights out here for kids and areas in this parking lot. I've seen a truck from the Ducks Unlimited go into that, what's now daycare, drive across the street drunk into it, wipe out that corner.
Mike.
So, yeah, I apologize as veteran, Mr. Chester. I do. I apologize for all this. That's right. I'm very frustrated and I'm...
Thank you. The lady in the back, right back there with the blue scarf, I had you next.
Hi, my name is Allie, and I'm here to speak in favor of John's Place. I'm a former attendee of Willits High School, and I can tell you that the problems that we had when I attended as a peer health advocate for our school was not with people who were bringing stuff in from bars. It was with drugs that they were bringing in. Weed was coming into the school. We had ecstasy come in Skittles packets that was being checked multiple times. Anything that was brought in from children were bottles that were brought in to the school that were purchased from people at places like the local Tower Mart across the street. And I can tell you, as a female, having walked up and down that street, being a cheerleader, walking home late at night, going to friends' games, this is Willits. We are a small town. We have a lot of transients in our community. And anytime during any place you feel uncomfortable on Main Street as a young female, there are multiple bars on Main Street. There are multiple organizations on Main Street where people loiter. And it has always been an issue on Main Street, and has always been an issue after football games, especially on Main Street. But that is not something that's new to our community. That is something that has always been there because of previously, establishments that have always been there. As for any noise issues, I was going to high school when Vassar's Pizza was there and serving alcohol, and myself attended some awesome pizza parties at the place. It got rather loud, too young to drink at the time. But, this is on Main Street, and it is also 101, and I don't think we should shy away from having good business just because it might get a little loud. This is Main Street. We expect businesses to be here. We expect them to be a little bit louder. And I just want to reiterate the fact that, John's Place, through no fault of their own, burnt down. They were previously right next to a high school that one of my best friends attended for a very long time, going to events with her at the charter school. We walk by that stuff every single day. We see that kind of behavior in movies all over the place. You can't watch TV now without seeing alcohol commercials or cigarette commercials. And then we're walking out of our school, and there's places right immediately across the street where that stuff is very heavily advertised and very easily accessible. So I don't really think that John's Place is necessarily anything new that would be coming into the community in this certain time. They're a very well-established business that has been in town. They've brought great revenue to us. And as a previous member of the high school who worked in peer health very, ferociously to try and stop young use of alcohol and tobacco and marijuana in our community, there are different and better approaches that can be taken. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm half colorblind, the bluish sweater right there.
Teal. Do you really have colorblind?
No, I don't think so. I just couldn't think of the color. It's my cover.
Well, good evening. My name is Linda Jarvis. I've lived here, I'm a newcomer. I've only been here 21 years. I have 4 adult grandsons and 6 great-grandchildren, and all 4 of my grandsons have gone through the Willits school system, so I'm pretty familiar with the town and the school system itself. And I am here to speak on behalf of John's Place. I count Dan and Jeannie as my friends. I feel very fortunate of that. And as Mr. Tobin mentioned, Dan's one of the last remaining World War II vets we have. And he's been a businessman in the community for 42 years. And Jeannie's family goes back to 1902. They've raised their own family here. They've contributed to everything in the community that they were asked to contribute to. They actually gave part of their parking lot to the city so that Madden Lane could be extended. I don't know how many of you know that. They've donated to the Willits sign. They're founders of many business organizations for the benefit of Willits, and participated in all of that. And I heard last time, I was here for the last hearing, and it's not another new bar in town. John's has been a landmark here for 80 years. Dave Tomes of Al's Redwood Room gave me permission to quote him when he said that Al's business declined when John's closed because when it was open there was a venue for people to come downtown. Other business people have expressed that same opinion to me. When John's burned down, the Chessers had 12 months to relocate to retain their liquor license. They wanted to stay in Willits because this is where their family is. This is where their clientele is. They looked at location after location. This is the only thing they could find. And they've already invested money in the location, not realizing that they were dealing with a system, a vetting process that would use up 9 months of their 12 months before they even got their first hearing. And they still, even if you folks approve this, they still have to go through the ABC. So I know you're heavily involved in other large projects in town like Rimco and everything else, but I'm hoping you'll give them the same fair consideration. With regard to the traffic, it's no worse than anywhere in town at high traffic periods, at JD Red House, the post office, heaven forbid, Safeway, and even the Mariposa Market. I don't know if you've ever tried to get in and out of there, turn left or right. It's darn near impossible. And hopefully the bypass will ease some of that. The Chesters have already agreed to all of the conditions that the city has set, that no live music, fencing, lights, no outside advertising. And this is property that is, if I'm not incorrect, it's already zoned for this type of a business. I understand concerns about the children. I'll be done just a second. But there's no entrances, as I mentioned, on State Street. It'll be posted, lighted, staffed, and patrolled. No one under 21 is allowed in or on the premises. And if juveniles want cigarettes or alcohol, they're not going to come to a place like that. They're going to go across the street or get someone to buy something for them across the street, not at a manned bar.
Thank you.
Well, I represent a great many people that hope you give the Chesters a chance to reestablish their historical landmark. And again, they were by a high school. The juveniles didn't flock there. I'm just hoping that you'll give them the consideration that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Laura Rowland. I'm a teacher at Blosser Lane, and I'm opposed to John's Place in the current location, in the proposed location. And with respect to the business owners and the institution of John's Place, I'm still opposed to it. I just think the location is wrong. I would love to see them be able to reestablish their business somewhere else in town. It's our Main Street, and I think the last thing we need on Main Street is another bar. I would also oppose another marijuana store. Those things, although they are prevalent in our community, we are a grape-growing region, as well as other substances, but I don't think that we need to promote it. And I really don't want it promoted right next door to our high schools, both Sanhedrin and Willits High, whether or not the kids would walk into it or think, that they're going to go hit somebody else up to score for them there. They probably wouldn't do that, and they might be more likely to do that at Tower, but we don't need yet one more place that is promoting alcohol or substances, as if, I just drive up and down Main Street and I see bud stores and bars. And when I first moved here, I'm a newbie here too. I've only been here for 11 years. And I remember when the Sun Cycle building was there, and I thought, what a cool town. We have a bike store right on Main Street. And in that time, I've just seen Main Street decline with more and more empty buildings. So my opposition is twofold. One, I don't want to see a bar next to the high school or on Main Street. And I would like to see our empty storefronts and be filled with commerce and businesses that add to our community, not just in revenue, but in opportunity and innovation and a healthy and active lifestyle, which people who frequent the bar might think it's a healthy and active lifestyle, but it's not the one that I would like to see promoted in the town that I've come to call home. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else? Jerry?
Hi there. Mostly point of clarification. The reason we're here today, obviously the applicants have an application in here, but when the bar was burnt down, again through no fault of John's Place, it was because it's a criminal act, not like what Mr. Tobin said, we couldn't just sit down and watch it happen per se. It was a criminal act occurring at the time. I feel for the owners of the bar, but the reality is when the bar relocated more than 500 feet, they were required not only to get our use permit, but also to get approval from ABC. So that's what's happening here. The reason everybody is here today, the applicants, city is you have to get approval and use permit from the city if you want to operate in a different location, as opposed to rebuilding right there. They have to go with all the codes. And ABC will scrutinize this. We did work with our planner and with the applicants to look for some conditions that I would not have been able to get had they rebuilt at the current location. And the applicants have worked with us. I want to put that out there, that they've worked with the city to answer some concerns there. The other end of the coin, I don't feel comfortable with the bar going in there, but if it is approved, then we've asked for some concerns to mitigate the issues we brought up. So.
Thank you, Jerry. Yes, right here in the middle of the room.
Again, my name is Sabrina Rodriguez. I'm a business owner. I'm a parent. I serve on the Willits Unified School Board. You heard from our Teachers Association. You heard about the letter that was signed by all 5 members of the Willits Unified School Board trustees. And first thing I'd like to do this evening is I would like to thank the youth who took the time to care and come to an adult meeting to express their concerns. So I'd like to say thank you very much. And I'd also like to say thank you to everybody else, because whether I agree or disagree with you, you took the time to be here, and I think that we should honor that and give everybody equal respect for that. I'd also like to say that I was there at the time shortly after the fire started. I saw Willits PD and the Little Lake Fire Department and all the other emergency personnel come and do their very best to save that piece of property, and I was deeply disappointed by the remarks of Mr. Tobin. I did have a property. I owned Imagination Station. I rented it from Nick Patel. I did not rent from you, sir. So initially, when I moved into the property, my property entrance was located on Marin Street, and the bar was located on Commercial Street. We didn't have an issue in terms of my young clients coming in and out and interacting with the bar. As time went on, we moved deeper into the building, and eventually we end up with a wall that was connecting. And Mr. Chester and I, several months before the incident happened, had spoke about the noise level, because the property owner, Nick Patel, and I had an agreement that there wouldn't be any loud music until 5:30 when the center was closed. And there was a reference to the fact that I found it acceptable to be located to a bar. The type of business I had wasn't an issue with a bar. However, a bar next to a high school is a different kind of situation. And the reason that I say that is because I have young children, and if there was a bar located next to the high school, unlike further down Main Street, my daughter can choose not to walk on that section of Main Street. But if it's next to the high school, she has little options to get to school without passing by the bar. And in all honesty, I was not comfortable going from Marin Street and shopping at the Quickie Mart that was on Commercial Street because of the loitering that was in front of the bar. And that is a very honest answer. Probably used the Quickie Mart half a dozen times because I was not comfortable with the actions that were taking place in front of there. And there were garbage issues behind the building. Mr. Chester is a very nice man. I believe that had we worked with it longer, that situation could have been resolved back there. But unfortunately, he wasn't my property owner. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. In the back, gentleman in the back.
Hi, I'm Mike Applett, and I'm the husband of a teacher at Willits High School. I'll be really brief. I think it comes down to location, location, location. I just feel that this location is terrible for this establishment. I I want to offer a possible suggestion, an alternative suggestion would be, if this is going to be a temporary location, why not put a temporary structure, a mobile portable building on the site while the new building is being built? If the owner decided to do that, I would ask you, as the planning commission, to bend over backwards to help him do that. You know, the address of the liquor license wouldn't have to be moved. You know, there could be something temporary put on the site while he's rebuilding. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure. Yeah, you can. I respect the fact that you were speaking for the Chessers before.
Shelley Revling, and everybody is feeling very passionate about their decisions on this, and which I respect both sides of the fence. I do work for Dan as a bartender. As I pointed out before, as a bartender, we have never ever served an under alcohol person at John's Place. We've never been cited. As bartenders, it's our job. It's our job, and we go to jail also on top of it's ABC covers all that. The Chessers have renewed their license. They've gotten an extension because if it isn't used within a year, they would lose their license. They did get an extension for this, and also the fact that I just have to bring out the fact that it really seemed like at the last meeting, it seemed like everybody was like on board with it, and then the reason that was given was that it was morally incorrect to have this next to the high school, as Mr. Burton had stated that night. And I flash back to the fact that at the Remco place, you guys are talking about putting in a brewery and a pub, which is right across the street from Bechtel Grove. So this is where I don't understand how I'm not trying to coincide the things, but it's just it was an attention grabber for me at being the last one that was the reasons why was given at the last meeting, why we couldn't open up. And, but City Council approves these pot places and stuff like that, and those are just my concerns. I just don't understand. Those are my questions about things, so. And like I said, I'm hoping for support on all this, and we're doing our best to make this a good experience for everybody. And we would definitely go out of our way to make sure that nothing happens at that location. And with the lights and with everything else, right now there's no lights. Right now there's nobody policing that area. And if anything bad's gonna happen, I'm telling you, even I wouldn't want to walk by there at nighttime the way that it is right now, because there's so many homeless and vagrants and camping out in there. At least this way, it's bright lights and big light. It's not going to be easy to just go in there and do something tragic or bad to anybody there. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Shelley. Do we have any other speakers in the second? Sure, Dan.
I had a stroke and I'm hard to understand a little bit. But when people had the only plate in town for the school come to me and asked me if I would get them the plate, and I said yes. But when I got grown, there's only plate that I found in the town that I could read the bar, everybody against it. But when they went to school, right in one foot from the bar, they were just letting to go in the bar. And when somebody with a place you're the only place, they'll tell you anything to do it. And I haven't I never had a trouble with all of the kids that go to the school when I had the bar and the liquor store. They was 1 feet away from the bar. We never had any trouble. And people, how many plays Shepherd's Time, you go down to where the court's going to be, how many people did you go tracking down the street and that? So that's all I got to say there.
Thank you, Dan. I just want to, Dan, tell me if I got this right, because you are a little hard to understand.
Pardon?
Tell me if I got this right, because I want to make sure I understood what you said, because I think it's an interesting point. But that when you had your bar at John's Place for a number of years, and the charter school wanted to come and start a school next to your bar, you didn't object to that. You said that would be okay, and that's, I think that. And now you're asking to put your bar next to a school, and now the school's objecting. That's your basic point, is that correct? Thank you. I just want to make sure people understood what he was, that's what I understood you were saying. I'm sure if everybody got it. Do I see any other second, third, and last call? I'd like to bring this back up here and wrap this up. I think we've heard a pretty substantial variety of both sides of this issue, which is somewhat unusual. Most of the time we just hear one side. So I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it up here and take comments from the council, or take a motion if someone cares to make one, or what is it, Holly?
I'm not quite to motion level yet, but I do have a couple of comments. One, I really want to honor Mr. Chesser for being in business for so long and being an institution. I mean, John's Place is an institution. And the fact that we haven't been able, that the construction has not happened there fast enough, I don't think it's too helpful to assign blame as far as the timeline. I feel like the city has been really responsive. Mr. Chesser's been really responsive when there's been concerns. The property owners have been really, trying to make sure that issues were addressed. And I have a couple of thoughts going on in my head. One is that even if it passes this planning commission decision, if it is approved, I have a hard time seeing the ABC approving it because of their rules that don't have anything to do with our rules. I see my position here not as a moral one, and the moral issue is tricky because I don't see that as my role. I see our role as really being one of zoning and appropriateness, and I think very carefully about councils in the future from us. Once we're not on here anymore, will future councils, if this is approved, be thinking like, these people were nuts? Why did they, couldn't they foresee some negative thing happening? Because the zoning I don't see it really as being compatible. I don't think that it's ideal in any stretch of the imagination. But the applicant has, but the applicant has changed the application to be temporary, which I do think is something that was one of my concerns last time, because I do feel like nothing in Willits is ever temporary. Like our temporary bridge on Railroad Avenue that was supposed to last 3 years and has been there, 13 or 20. So the fact that there's a timeline on this, I think, is a step towards coming towards some sort of compromise, that they would be able, in theory, to be able to improve the building for a short term. I like the idea of improving that building, I gotta say. And it's been improved even just in the preparing for this conversation. It's already been cleaned up. So that's really tricky. But I have also been contacted by a number of people in the community whose views were expressed tonight, which is that they have concerns about walking by. I really want to agree with Sabrina in that thank you all the young folks that came and talked. It's not easy to get here and speak in public, even for grown-ups. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time to speak. I think one thing that was brought up is there is some misconceptions. Bartenders are not allowed to serve minors, and that was mentioned by some of the other speakers. So I was a Willits High student. Do I think that it was easier to get, alcohol from Tower Mart than a bar? I think the bar issues, I'm not outing myself. I'm just saying, like I said, I think it's really dangerous for us to get into moral issues. But I absolutely hear the concerns about the patron-student interaction. So these are, I'm not willing to make a motion at this point, but I do just want to make those points that I really appreciate John's Place as a business in our community, and I would like to figure out a way that we could help them out. But the zoning is not ideal, and when I look at Blosser Lane in the middle of an industrial zone, I think, what were people thinking back then? And I think that they were thinking there was nowhere else to go, which I think is a similar experience to what Mr. Chesser's having. Is despite vacant properties, people have very specific needs, and so it's really hard to sort of fit into these existing properties. So I'd be interested to hear what the other council members think.
I have a question of Jerry. It's just a point of clarification, Jerry. Several people have alleged this evening that the smoke shops in town sell pot. Now, I have
Not supposed to.
I've never. That's what I just want. I've never been in them. I've kind of wondered, I guess, but
They're smoke shops, and they're not supposed to be sold. We have a prohibition. We don't have any dispensaries.
we have no dispensaries, permitted dispensaries.
Permitted.
That's, okay, so I just wanted to get clear if I was missing something.
And also, something that was said earlier, the reason, again, that this is under scrutiny is a school can move next to a bar, and that doesn't trigger scrutiny by ABC. But a bar moving next to a school triggers the look at it.
Well, in fact, schools have exemptions from any zoning rules. They can go wherever the heck they want.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that applies to charter schools or not, but it certainly applies to public schools.
Yeah, they exempt themselves. So.
They exempt themselves as well. Okay.
So
well, thank you for that.
So Blosser exempted themselves. It wasn't the city council that made
we
that.
never supported it. Yes.
I had a lot of ambivalence last time we discussed this, and I'm still ambivalent because the community is ambivalent, and that's part of it. As I'd love to do something that everybody agreed on, but that doesn't happen. What has changed since the last time this came to the city council or to the planning commission is one of the things is that not having live music at the venue. And I think that is significant. Certainly it's significant about noise, but I think it's also significant about not having people all arrive or all leave at certain times. It'll be presumably more spread out. The other thing that's even more significant to me is that it's a limited time. The idea of approving a conditional use permit that would run forever next to a school really is uncomfortable for me, and I do think this is not an ideal location for a bar. I would much rather not have it near a school. But given that it has a limited time period on it, and that it's a matter of trying to keep a long-established business here locally before they are able to move back to their old location, is weighing pretty heavily on my balance sheet here. I'm not real comfortable with it, but I think that on balance, it is important to have good, long-established businesses be able to continue operating in Willits for the tax revenue, for the employees' sake, all of those things. And the other thing about it is, in terms specifically of its location next to the school, the fact that the entrance from the parking lot is away from Main Street. And all the windows are away from Main Street. And presumably, almost all of the patrons of John's Place are going to go in and park. And if they're going to hang out in front of the door, they're not going to be on Main Street, mostly. I mean, it would be really nice if in the management of this establishment, if it does get to locate there, they keep people from hanging out on Main Street, especially when high school kids are going back and forth. But the orientation of this particular building being to the parking lot does also factor into my weighing the pros and cons. And again, it's not an easy decision, and I'm still ambivalent. I'm glad it's only for a temporary period, because I would much rather see John's Place back at their old location. Thank you.
Yeah. I voted for it the first time, and I'm probably going to vote for it the second time. And for all of the people that are here, I taught school here for 35 years. And I never had anybody that came to my shop, which was in the back part of the Willits High School, that ever had a drink from John's Place. But I did have quite a few that came with bottles of liquor that they did not buy there. They bought at some other liquor store. And also, there is also another segment which was not when I was teaching, because I've been retired for 15 years now, that was not as prevalent as it is now. And I think that it's really difficult for people to say that John's Place is a bad environment when all you have to do, I had students in my class that said it would take me an hour or maybe 40 minutes to get you a beer, but I could get you something else to smoke within about 4 minutes. And I'm sure that that was correct. I never tried it. I never asked them anything else other than that. So I think that to say that John's Place is a bad element, I raised 2 children in this particular city. And they probably walked past John's Place. Hopefully they never went in there, but I don't know whether they went in there or not when they were underage. I doubt it. Probably somebody threw them out. But I'm just saying that I think that it is really difficult for where I sit to look at a person that is trying to do a business. It's not a business that's going to be harming to people that are walking up and down the street. There's enough people driving up and down the street that if anything was happening, that they certainly would notice it and phone the police if the police weren't on duty to see it. And just all of the things that have happened, people have said today, is just kind of bothers me. And I'll just leave it at that. I mean, the people that have talked, I knew some of the people that have talked today when they were 12 years old and 10 years old. And I watched them in high school also. So, thank you very much.
Larry, would you like to make a motion?
No. I would like to make a motion to recommended action, please.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Okay. Now, go ahead.
Yeah, I have some comments before we vote. First of all, full disclosure, I was invited by Mrs. Chesser to come visit them at their home, which I did, and I had never really met with Dan and Jean face to face. We had about a 1 hour meeting at their house, and we went to the Main Street site, and I found them to be charming people. I like them. Having said that, this is not personal. There is nothing personal involved with this thing. This is not an attack on the Chessers. It's not, it can't be taken that way, because it's not. The question I was going to ask earlier was, when is the Commercial Street property going to be rebuilt? Do we know?
I had a conversation with the Chessers and asked them that question, and it's undetermined at this period of time.
Okay, so we're looking at essentially an undetermined an open end. 2 years, if we pass this, then it could be further. And probably, well, I don't know which would be worse, to grant the application to let them move to the new location and operate there for 2 years and then shut them down at the end of 2 years, or not let them open up. I don't know which would be the worst case scenario, but that's just putting it out there. We talked about the traffic and the issues of leaving the property, and we saw the picture that we're all familiar with of what North Main Street looks like with cars lined up to make a left-hand turn going up Sherwood Road. So, and I believe it was mentioned that unfortunately this is a normal thing in Willits, and we've sort of gotten used to dealing with it. But I'm trying to picture a patron leaving the bar, maybe in an impaired state, in his car, crossing a sidewalk, which could have, kids walking by. There's a fence there, and the other question I had was what that fence is going to look like. So what is the line of visibility going to be when you drive out of the parking lot, you cross the sidewalk and you go into the street, number one. Number two, you go out to the street, so if you want to make a right-hand turn to go north, that's easy. That lane is pretty free. If you want to go up to Sherwood Road, then you got to fight into that traffic that may be back beyond the driveway. What happens then? That could lead to issues. If you're coming in and if you want to turn left and go south, then again you have the same issues having to deal with the cars that are backed up. So I guess what I'm saying is at that location, there's all kinds of situations that can happen that none of which can be good. And again, if you're dealing with people in a possibly impaired condition, this could be a bad combination of things. When we're talking about the kids, I don't think anybody seriously believes that any of the high school kids are going to walk into John's place and belly up to the bar and ask for a drink and expect to get served. That's not going to happen. That's not what the issue is, from my understanding. It's not about the kids going into the bar and being served. It's about kids doing their own business, coming home from school, walking down a public street, and possibly being accosted by people who hang out at bars. And again, I have to be politically correct. I cannot infer in any way that people who go to bars are bad people. They're not. But, things can happen. And that's the situation. We've heard from parents whose daughters will be walking by, and sons even at times, walking down the street. They don't need to have to worry about walking down their street that someone's going to jump out at them or even say something to them. That's not a good situation for any young person to have anybody yell anything at them or make a remark in passing. When I think of this, I think of my nephews and nieces who grew up in New York City, and this may be contradictory. And these kids grew up in New York City, and they walked and they took buses to their schools and to stores and things like that. And I was amazed to watch my 13-year-old nephew navigate his way down Broadway among all the inhabitants of Broadway, who are not always sterling characters. And I thought, you can learn some character. But that was a daily thing for him. He learned how to survive on the streets. Kids here, they don't know this. They're not really exposed to it that much, and to set up the situation, it could be a bad deal. I would like to see John's place move back to its original spot, and frankly, as someone pointed out, it's been almost a year since the fire, and we don't see any kind of action going on there, and I'm really wondering if we're ever going to see anything built at that property. And someone made a remark about that the last time we took a moral approach, we played the morality card. Well, it wasn't anything about a morality card. It was about the fact that we have an empty property that's been burned down. Why are we looking at building somewhere else instead of rebuilding at the original place, which is what should have happened? So it's not about morality, it's about, let's get the business back where it belongs. And that is my comment.
Okay, there is a motion and a second. Do we have any further comment? Roll call vote, please.
And the motion is to
approve the application.
Councilmember Stransky?
Yes.
Strong?
Yes.
Madrigal?
No.
Martinstein?
no.
Mayor Burton?
You guys did it to me again. And I'm going to surprise you this time. The two-year limitation turned me on this deal, and I think Mr. Chesser has a right to operate his business, so I'm voting yes.
Yes.
We'll take a 10-minute break and then come back and let's talk about goals. We're going to reconvene as the City Council and go back up to Public Matters, item 3B. And the discussion and direction regarding the city's top 5 economic development goals. I'm not sure what brought this to the table at this time. I have to apologize, I did not do hand in. I looked in the deal here to say, oh, someone's going to bring up our workshop and remind us what our top 5 goals are. Not that
that was a natural assumption. So this is being brought forward tonight because EDFC, Economic Development and Financing Corporation, has put a request out to all of their representatives, and Councilmember Strong is the city's representative on that committee, to identify the city's top 5 economic goals so that their executive committee can have a discussion about that on November 5th, next Thursday. So I did include the council goals that you guys came up with in March. However, not all of those are about economic development, but I wanted you to have that as a reference. And then I had emailed the 5 of you, I think last week, asking for you to submit your thoughts ahead of time. And 2 of you responded, and I have those, excuse me, here for you. So Vice Mayor Ornstein and Councilmember Madrigal, and then I understand that Councilmember Stransky verbally gave some information to our city clerk. So the discussion is before you to identify the top 5 goals, economic goals, and give direction to Councilmember Strong to take back to EDFC.
And I could see this being a broader discussion, but from what I gather, EDFC is just wanting to know what our goals are so that they can see if they're meeting our needs as far as helping with that?
That's mainly it. And they're doing that with all of the cities in the county. They're looking to see, what could we use help on and what role EDFC might have in helping each of our cities achieve their economic development goals.
Because it seems to me, just sort of looking at both Ron's and mine, there's a lot of similarity as far as, making sure we have water infrastructure, plans for after the bypass. I sort of specifically spoke about signage, but, Ron is talking about making sure that we're prepared for that. Job retention. And Ron, you mentioned recreation and improved traffic circulation. I voiced a concern about vacant properties, and that working with the chamber to try to, it's sort of all in the same thing. We want more jobs, we want a healthy, thriving business community. I'm sure we could disagree as individuals about what the role of the cities is in that or not, but it seems like these could be combined into one thing, and I don't know if other council members have additional things that aren't mentioned on here that they see as an economic goal.
Well, I just think that we went through this process a year ago, 6 months ago, 9 months ago? or
Earlier
whatever.
this year.
That, whenever,
March
28th,
yeah.
28th.
3 months,
or
6 months
thereabouts.
ago.
And, I mean, I don't know why we wouldn't just send them this paper.
Well, as I said, not all of those are economic goals.
Yeah, but
Most
close
of them
enough.
are.
Who cares?
They are close enough. I'd be fine with that.
Our top 3 goals, the number 1 goal was planning for post bypass, and that's, we've been,
That's economic.
we've been entrenched in that and will continue to be. We're working with the Chamber of Commerce. Chamber of Commerce is also doing a lot of activities with Employers Forum, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, to identify the needs in various parts of the community, whether they're employers, whether they're the schools, the small businesses, and come up with solutions for those. So I think that what you have before you does identify
Yeah,
our
I mean,
goals.
we put a whole day in on doing
Yeah.
this, and let's just send them this.
What if, I mean, I would agree with that.
Does that work for you?
What if the next step could be taking a highlighter and highlighting the
No,
economic
I don't
ones?
want to, I don't want to spend the time here trying to.
I'd be fine with that then. I mean, I
make
think,
a motion that we forward this through Madge or whatever, and they can, I don't care what they do with it. We don't even
I'll
belong to
sec-
EDFC, the truth be told.
I will second, or is that just direction?
No, that's a motion, because I.
I'll second that.
Okay. Rick, you good with that?
Yeah, what I wanted to just add is that I think if we just send them that, they will be able to essentially highlight those
Yeah, pick
aspects
out what they think's
that they have
important.
some ability to help with, which would be specifically more economic development, business development, that kind of thing, and that gets us off the hook. And
So is the next step that they're going to send us money to implement these things?
Yeah.
So
Maybe if
we
we
have a
send-
motion, do we have any community that would like to address this? Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes.
Yes.
Stransky. Strong.
Yes.
Madrigal.
Yes.
Weinstein.
Oh, yeah.
Mayor Harden.
I do just want to add that it was interesting to think specifically about the economic factors of our town. I mean, I think it's a worthwhile exercise as part of our other goals.
Yeah, I was hoping we could be more focused about that, but that's okay. This is a good way to know.
And you didn't do your homework either. so
I didn't
you
do my
can't-
homework, so.
Okay, I think we might jump right, might be going to city manager reports here. Right to appeal,
Consent calendar.
We didn't do
consent calendar, we haven't done that, minus the October 14th minutes.
I'll move we approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Any comments on the consent calendar? Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
Strong.
Yes.
Madrigal.
Yes.
Weinstein.
Yep.
Mayor Harden.
Yeah,
Can I just have one comment on the informational reports?
sure.
So in the informational reports, I'm sure you guys all saw, there is the sales tax information, and I don't know, it's not under Susie's, I don't know if she's gonna address this under her time or not, but it
Well,
is a
the
little
finance-
concerning,
Finance committee did meet
Okay, so,
3 days ago.
so that's just one of those things that I'm gonna pull out of the informational reports, because it's
Yep, it is.
important.
Yep, it is. Okay, right to appeal, persons are dissatisfied with the decision, the city may have a right to review that decision by court. Adopted 1094.6 Code of Civil Procedure, which generally limits to 90 days with time within which the decision of city and agencies can be challenged. So, verbal reports from the city manager.
The first thing I want to report on is that November 1st is Sunday, and that is the date that our new mixed organics diversion service goes into effect with solid waste of Willits. And I distributed out the flyer that they are going to be sending out to all of their customers. In addition to that, they are labeling all of their receptacles. I didn't pass these out, but there you go.
But that's not ours, that's from Waste Management.
So they've been busy. They've purchased 200 of these green waste receptacles and are labeling them. I met with Jerry Ward a couple of weeks ago, and he explained to me that they are going to be starting with the businesses, the restaurants, and basically going door to door with them because they're going to have some special challenges. First of all, this is going to be a new receptacle that they're going to have to find space for. And so Solid Waste will be working with them to come up with the solutions. They also don't have the green waste that residential customers do. And so there's not going to be quite the mix of the green waste with the organics. And there's concern about just the residue with the food. So then he said that they would be starting on the east side of town and moving towards the west side of town. So it's my understanding that every customer won't have this in place on November 1st. This will be promoted, and then they'll get their cans shortly thereafter.
These are the small cans?
So they're going to pick up the old cans and replace them?
I think they're talking about the new cans for commercial.
For people that don't have that.
And then for the residential, they're going to be sort of phasing in how much public outreach they do, is that?
Right, they're having to fix these labels to all of the cans, so they're going to be actually picking them up and replacing them with label cans.
Okay.
Well, if I can tag on to that, because from the MSWA meeting that we had last week, we talked about that as well. And one of the things that's going to be offered is MSWA has gotten a lot of these small, what they call countertop garbage cans, plastic cans, and any customer can pick them up and I'm not clear exactly if you have to go down to MSWA or if we can get them from solid waste. But you can get this thing, and you can either dump your garbage into it or buy compostable bags from a store that run roughly about 20 cents a bag, or use paper bags if you don't like to just throw it into the thing. But that's going to be, in conjunction with this program.
They're the countertop composters.
Yeah.
I have a stylish one for the filter.
So will the residential customers starting next week be doing that? I mean, able to put that waste into their green waste bin?
Not all of them immediately. He's rolling them out, starting east, moving west.
Okay.
So what he's going to do.
So he really doesn't want people to know about it this year?
Well,
because it's really not available to I'm not supposed to start doing this yet. You're not supposed to do this until he tells you to.
It goes into effect November 1st. He did not give me a specific time frame as to whether we're talking a week or 2 weeks, just that they would start the replacements on the east side and move over to the west side.
But this would be the labels on the cans that he's talking about, plus that would be like the trigger to get it started.
Right.
Okay.
My understanding would be that as long as you know what the rules are, which is what things go in the green bins and what things don't go in the green bins, that we could all start on November 1st, because he's already apparently taking the green bin waste, the yard waste, to Cold Creek compost. So it's already okay to put your compostable food waste into the green bins. It's just that it's going to take him a while to get all of them labeled.
And
so I don't think, anyone who understands what is allowed to go in there could start right next week.
So are they going to start a weekly pickup starting next week on the 1st?
Oh, that's a good question.
It's supposed to.
They're supposed to.
That's part of the
Not
thing.
weekly on the green.
On the green, yes, that's part of the deal.
Yeah, it's
So that
bi-weekly
it's not
on
stinky.
recyclables. The greens are weekly.
Yeah.
So it changes on next
November.
week.
That was my question. Is it
We
going to
should confirm
happen?
that with him.
Yeah.
I could be messing him up here talking about
I
this.
know.
It is.
He might be sitting at home yelling at his TV.
That's what.
Give him your cell phone number so he can call us right now.
That is what his new contract expects of him is that as of November 1st.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to another
Yeah,
report
maybe we could
before we
clarify
muddle
that.
this water.
So I apologize that I don't have enough detail on that. Monday night, I attended a special Board of Supervisors meeting in Ukiah, along with Councilmember Stransky, Vice Mayor Ornstein was there, and this was on the new medical marijuana legislative regulatory package. And it was largely an informational meeting. One of the things these statutes go into effect on January 1st, but by March 1st of next year, the city would have to adopt an ordinance to, help me with this, retain local control of licensing for the operators. If we don't do that, then we surrender our local control of that to the state.
Can you say that one more time? Licensing control of operators?
Local control of licensing for operators.
And this is presumably medical.
Including banning.
Yes.
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah.
So in order to take any action, we have to take that action.
And this is only medical at this point.
That's correct, medical marijuana only. So this is obviously an area that we need to focus on over the next, short while and start the conversation here. Let's see.
Can I just add on that? I think there's some other regional meeting going on up north of here on November 16th that might be of interest to somebody who wants to, about the whole
it's not a
regulatory.
public meeting, it's a league meeting. And so Holly is our league rep,
Okay.
and
Just wanted to make sure it was on the radar.
we received communication about that.
I don't want to say that I ignore marijuana stuff when it goes across my email, but sometimes I do. So if I'm supposed to attend that, maybe if I could get a reminder. I'm sure I will through the league.
Let's see, yesterday morning, the Chamber of Commerce hosted the second of the Employers Roundtable, which is a fairly new group that they've put together. And this is really geared at the top 10 employers in Willits. And what they did the first meeting that we had a couple months back, just shared a lot of the challenges and issues that employers face. So this is different from the top 10 revenue generating businesses. This is about being an employer in Willits, and identified as issues were recruitment and retention and drug testing and
Youth development.
yes, job skills and what's coming out of the school system for entry-level jobs. So the purpose of yesterday's meeting was to start coming up with solutions. So on that note, they invited representatives from the college, the school district, Mendocino County Office of Ed, the Workforce Investment Development Board, to share in that dialogue and start generating some solutions. So it's a pretty dynamic group. They're going to be meeting, I think they said once a month is what they're
I
going
think the next meeting is going to be the first of the year.
Right, get past the holidays.
Yeah, I think once a month is way too ambitious.
When is the next meeting, excuse me?
I took away that it would be in January. I think these next 2 months are not really feasible anyway, and I don't think personally that we need to meet that often.
So Larry, they did not nail down a date yesterday, just that they would.
Business people tend not to want to meet as much as government people.
And I had voiced this concern to Adrian, and I'll let the chamber know as well, but I think similar to the downtown planning group, I think this is an area that has a lot of interest. Because of Brown Act issues, only 2 council members could come. I'm sure there's business people that would like to participate, but maybe aren't one of the top 10 employers. So I'm hopeful that the chamber will have additional events that include more people. And if it's a public thing, then all the council members could come if we don't take any action. But obviously our business and employment is something of great interest to all of us, I would say.
I'll pass it on. I do know that they are planning a membership event sometime in the near future, and I'm sure we'll be hearing about that. Let's see, you mentioned Main Street Planning Group, and so just an update on what's happening there. the FTE, the Fund Transfer Agreement, which is the agreement between the city and Caltrans, is signed and it's on its way, or will be on its way tomorrow. It has to be in their hands by October 30th. We just got this on Monday, by the way. So we've had regular communications about when to expect it, and then we received it on Monday. I reviewed it, and it'll be on its way tomorrow. Separately, we will have a contract in place with Local Government Commission that is part of this, but we've had to hold off on that until the FTE. It's just, you have to have the correct sequence of events. So the next Thursday, we have a couple of key meetings taking place. The first will be the administrative kickoff meeting, which is between city staff and Caltrans and LGC to get together. We've had a lot of emails and phone calls, but this is going to be our time to get together and just kind of hash out the details going forward. And then immediately following that is the initial meeting for this technical advisory group that's going to be the main project group for this planning project. And so that group is comprised of Mayor Burton, myself, the police chief, public works director, planner, our fire chief, so we have make sure that emergency services is represented in that group. We have several Chamber of Commerce and Main Street merchants that will be part of that. Supervisor Woodhouse, Alan Falleri, who's our volunteer extraordinaire, and then MCOG, Caltrans, and LGC, and also Frontier Days Association will have somebody in that group. There will also be plenty of other opportunities for anyone that wants to be part of this overall project. There's going to be a lot of community events. The charrette, of course, is the big one, but other workshops and open house type events that there's going to be opportunity for people to participate if they're not part of this group. And then on November 10th, when we have the special council meeting, Allison Purnell, who's our partner with LGC, she will be here to give a brief update because we will have already had these two meetings. We also have a Revite Ed meeting on the afternoon of November 5th. So it'll be a good time for her to come and give that update for everyone in the community to hear firsthand.
What time are we meeting on November 10th? Then evening?
Yeah, we haven't set a time, so it's up to you.
Okay, all right. I know I've got something else.
And as a special meeting, it will be a limited, it'll be a limited agenda.
No, it's going to be the regular meeting.
It's going to be a regular reschedule?
Special meeting, because it's not on the regular evening, we will accommodate everything we need to that night.
But it's not going to be considered a special meeting,
Yes, it will.
only because of the date change. It's still going to be like a regular business
Tuesday.
meeting, right?
Not
Because
entirely.
Veterans Day is Wednesday?
Yeah, really.
Oh.
Only?
That's it, I got a board meeting that day. It should be all
Would you repeat what, I missed that, I didn't realize that was.
It is a special meeting.
We are having a city council special meeting, instead of the 11th, it's going to be the 10th, is that right?
That's correct.
Uh-huh. Well,
And you couldn't be there, yeah. But it was a Veterans Day issue.
Right. And there's also something else driving it to have it that night. We have an internal meeting that day that we may need to bring something to the city council that night. All right, and then, any more questions on the Main Street?
No.
Matter?
Keep moving.
Okay. Then, last week, Rod and myself attended the CalPELRA conference, which is the annual big public agency labor relations conference. And I attended several sessions that are pretty relevant to stuff that we're dealing with right now. So you always walk away
inspired?
Yes, well, I wouldn't say inspired, but better informed.
Inspired about human resources.
And then lastly, I wanted to report on, we still are working through our reorganization, and one such personnel change that took effect this week, is Bill Wilson has been designated as our new Public Works Supervisor. Bill's been with the city for a number of years, started out in Public Works, and then has been at the water plant as an operator for the last, I want to say 5 years. and applied for this position. It was an internal recruitment, and he took the helm of that on Monday.
Congratulations.
Rod's smiling. Okay, all right, thank you. We will move on to department recommendations. City clerk, Ms. Kathy?
Nothing at this time.
Susie, you're going to kind of cover our finance meeting a little bit for me?
I can if you want.
Yeah,
I thought you
thank
might want to do that.
No, you can do it.
Okay.
Probably much better.
One of you was listening.
Yesterday at our finance committee meeting, we went over the expenses that have happened so far the first quarter. Basically, that's the only thing that you can really look at in the general fund. The income hasn't started coming in yet. Through September, you're still getting for last fiscal year. We did look at the enterprise funds, and those we could see a little bit more of what's going on. Everything is looks like it's doing well. The expenses are under the 25% with a few exceptions, which you would expect 25% at the first quarter ending. We talked about sales tax a little bit. I wanted to point out that although this is 5.5% lower than last year at this time, if you look at the chart on page 2 that shows the historical cash collections, and you kind of just look at your second quarters.
Say it again.
Page 2. Yeah. You can see that that's typically your biggest quarter is the second quarter. But it's, if you go back, it's not that much off of, except for the last 2 years, where the gas prices were so high that it's causing it. And if you look at page 3, you can see that the very first chart where it says service stations, and it shows what the high has been over the last 2 years and where we're at today, it's all gas prices. And I think this is going to give us a pretty good idea of what it's going to be like post-bypass as well. So I think we're getting an early feel for what may be the norm.
Wasn't there like an unusual revenue in sales tax, either because, I don't remember if it was bypass thing, or maybe it was like the PG&E, like had a big equipment upgrade. I just remember there being a spike where we were like, hey, that's great, but it was a kind of random.
One-time thing.
Yeah, one-time thing.
Yep.
I think that was last year. Huh.
DOT has to be better than it is.
Pardon me?
The DOT has to be better than it has been.
TOT, yes.
I don't know, over the last couple of years,
Still
I
better.
think.
And, this last quarter with all the fires, I'm sure that we're gonna see it really increased. One more thing, USDA loan. So I called USDA to see if we could just refinance it and get a lower rate, and they say that they don't allow you to take a USDA loan and then replace it with another USDA loan. So I'm still working with someone from municipal finance. He goes out and he finds buyers of the bonds, and he thinks he has someone that's interested, but he wants to wait till he's 90% got, all the information before we come back to
Is there a
council.
prepayment penalty on the bonds?
No prepayment penalty.
And what's the balance?
Oh, gosh.
Well, you don't need to tell me right now,
Okay.
but I'd like to know the balance.
I knew it last week.
Yeah, I'd like to know.
Yeah. I
Because
want
we
to
were-
say it's around 3 million, 2.5, 3, it's between 2 and 3 million.
Okay.
Let's say
And
that.
we want
I'll give you the,
we want a 20-year note on it? Or what do we want?
currently, it's scheduled to be paid in 2033, so a 20-year note would be great I mean, we'd be able to continue with our,
I'd be interested. I'll get together with you. I'd like to know
okay.
the payments and the interest and the balance and the
Okay.
basics. We'll play with it.
Okay.
So we belong to ourselves?
Well,
Huh?
was that a question? No?
No.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Human Resources, Mr. Legal.
No recommendations.
Okay. Public Safety, Jerry?
Push past our planner there and getting into this. Well, Halloween is coming up, and it's on a Saturday, and I think the weather is looking a little better, unless that's going to change all of a sudden. So we're going to have a lot of ghouls and goblins out there in some of our streets, and in our residential areas, they tend not to be as well lit during this time of year, and it's the fall, and so I'm going to ask that the motoring public, for those of you watching on TV, keep an eye out for the kids. As part of that, we put on a couple extra officers that night. In fact, I'll be out there myself also. We find that if we can have a presence out there, it kind of dissuades those that want to trick as opposed to treat. And with that, we've been going to the schools, talking to, this week we did the kindergarten classes. We distributed out some kind of glow-in-the-dark safety bags that have some safety tips, and the kids were really receptive. Another thing that's happening tomorrow is the big hospital move. Kind of as a reminder, the paper did a great job of letting folks know this is happening, but you're going to be moving patients in the morning to the new hospital, and the old one will close, the new one will be open. So by the afternoon, if you need something at the hospital, go there. But if you just want to go gawk, please don't do it while they're moving patients. There's going to be a lot of traffic on the road.
Jerry, is that definitely still on? I've heard that it was postponed again. Is that definitely on for tomorrow?
I got that I'm supposed to be at a briefing tomorrow at 5 a.m. at the new hospital.
Okay.
So I think it's as long as it's going to be.
Email this afternoon said it was on, so.
Yeah, so, and so we've been working with the hospital. We're going to have 2 extra officers on in the morning, one hanging around the old hospital, one at the new one, just in case something goes wrong. And I don't expect anything will go wrong. Sounds like this will be like a planned military event, so to speak. They've got extra ambulances coming in to move patients, and they're staffing both hospitals so that something happens. And then at a certain point, they're going to put up barriers in the parking lots to the old hospital and put up signs directing people that that's no longer, they're going to cover all the signs so that hopefully folks don't wander up there. There's also a plan to keep security on at the old hospital for a period of time before they transition that to something else. So then I've been working with, I got to tell you, Lisa Epstein's got a lot of energy with the chamber. She's been hitting the road hard and fast there, and spoke with her the other day about distributing our letters of agency, where we work with the business owners to give us permission to kind of ask folks to move along at their behest after hours. And so she's going to help me distribute those out, and we're going to be a little more active with the chamber there with her at the helm. And so obviously that's related to our transient issue, which continues to be something that's plaguing us. I've spoken to a lot of businesses, and it continues to be, if you call us, we will come. And obviously it depends on what else is happening, so I want to make sure that that's out there. On a happy note, one of our officers his wife just gave birth to a little boy. And so Officer Leaf will welcome a new leaf to the world. So
Turn over a new leaf.
There you go. So I love it when our officers settle down and do their families here. So, and then on another note, I guess I got to tell you, I'm a little disappointed. One of our speakers earlier, I guess, insulted not only the police department, but the fire department, and even the sheriff's department, because on the day of that fire, we were there. I got to tell you, the fire department, they put a lot of water on that building, even while we were in the middle of a police action. And I think it's an insult to all the men and women that were there that night to spread that falsehood. Those firemen were disappointed they couldn't enter the building because of what was happening, and so no one stood by and let the building burn. That is a out-and-out lie. So, thank you.
Okay, Chief, thank you. Let's move along.
Can I have a quick Jim question? I apologize.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Any update on Remco? I just bring this up because
I sent an email to Phil Hunsucker telling him that, we're having a council meeting. He's the attorney for the trust.
Right.
And said that we're having a meeting coming up. Do you have any news I can report? And he said that the paperwork that he has prepared is in the hands of Pepsi. He's waiting to hear back from them. So Pepsi is the
thank you for keeping on it. Yeah, thanks for keeping up on it.
Community development, do you have anything more you want to add?
The obstruction out from under the Broadest Creek Bridge. So for you guys to get that done before the rains came and everything, it was not even reasonable to ask. So thanks very much. Coastal cleanup happened. Great event. Didn't have quite as many volunteers this year, but I gotta say I really didn't have time to promote the event the way I have in the past either. That being said, a group of high school students weren't able to participate in the 19th. So last weekend they all got together and they had their own coastal cleanup in the city of Willits.
Cool.
And I have to say that Jerry Ward supported both events 100%. He comped all of our trash. So, great thing. Tomorrow's moving day for the hospital. This afternoon, the OSHPD inspector and I approved stock and staff for the rural health clinic, the pharmacy, and the new foundation offices. We're moving it ahead. We're probably 3 weeks, at the most a month, away from being complete with that project and having it up and running. I'm sure you all noticed the O'Reilly Auto Parts project is up and running. They had a little problem with some soil conditions. So we had to haul some of the existing soil out and replace it, but things are going pretty well. And then one last thing, I think this afternoon, I wasn't able to check with Bud, but the John Mayer property along Hale Creek, between the Mormon Church and Hale Creek, we basically regraded that property to get rid of all the mud bogs, get rid of the motocross track, get rid of all those attractive nuisances there, and to clean up the drainage into Hale Creek from there. It's mulched, we've got straw bales, the property is now posted, and we have letters of agency with Willits PD. So now when people go down there and do damage to the property, they can be held responsible. And that's really it. Things have been going well.
That's the property that's in the hollow behind the church?
Yes.
It kind of surrounds the church.
Yeah.
On the O'Reilly property, it's exciting to see that happening because we've been hearing about it for such a long time. Are there improvements that have to be made to the ingress to that property as part of it?
There
or is
will
it
be,
just
yes.
Okay, because that's kind of a weird.
Yeah, the driveway down to the old David Moon residence in the back will get paved all the way to the back of the project there. We'll tune up the corner there. We'll have some handicap ramps at the corners of the sidewalks at this point. And yeah, it's
great to see.
It's going to work pretty well,
happen, yeah.
and there's a common driveway with Willits Power, and I think that's going to work fine.
And Mendocino looks really good too. I mean,
Yeah,
that seems to be progressing.
Mendocino's going great.
Yep.
And again, they had quite a bit of problem with subgrade soil and did a lot of over excavation and literally brought it back to grade with slurry, so that there's no question about how well that building will be founded.
Did they raise it above the floodplain?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, good. Thank you. Public Works Engineering.
Seems later than it is. On On the Public Works side, like Adrian said, Bill Wilson started as the Works Supervisor on Monday, and I'm happy to say that he had positive impact immediately and with a great attitude, and it's been a nice first 3 days. We got a long way to go, but it's still been it's been a really good change. With respect to Public Works, we're trying to prepare for the winter, sweeping the streets. We got the sweeper up and running, and it seems to be an ongoing maintenance piece of machinery. But overall, we've been bouncing back and forth between a lot of different projects, helping out the sewer plant with the metering project that's probably about 50% done right now. We have the main meter in that's going to measure all the flow coming back from the equalization basins. One important point that came up when we did a little bit of excavation in the bottom of the first equalization basin, you could see very clearly the clay liner that was put in for that pond, which I know was one question that came up in the past. Anyway, that's our major project over there before the rainy season hits. And on the water side, we've had some recent changes that have had a direct effect on organic material coming out of the water treatment plant that directly relates to our recent violation. By adding a different chemical, we've greatly decreased the organic matter that's being sent out of the plant, which will help us out in the future. With respect to the violation, we've been answering a lot of calls and concerns. I think if it was a very significant issue, the Regional Water Quality Control Board, Division of Drinking Water, would require us to do more testing because of our recent violation. So, in an attempt to be proactive, we've started testing more regularly rather than quarterly. We're going to retest every 2 weeks, and we'll have better data to provide that will give us some better information. So, kind of rambling, but
any questions?
that's all I got.
Up here. Thanks, Ron.
Thanks.
Water and wastewater, we covered that. Let's go on to committee reports. MCOG?
MCOG is Monday.
Yeah.
Okay. LAFCO?
Has not met?
MTA?
We're meeting tomorrow at the Plant Street area to unveil a new electric bus, which should be interesting. And a regular meeting there too. But
Put it with your electric pickup.
Electric bus. So that's tomorrow at 1:30.
MSWA?
It is electric.
MSWA?
MSWA met last week, and the most significant thing we discussed was about the green waste that we kind of covered.
EDFC, anything more to add there?
No, the meeting I reported last time, and we don't meet until next month.
League?
Has not met?
Water and wastewater has not met. Revite Ed, did meet?
No, next Thursday after next.
We
Or
met
Next Thursday, the 5th.
We discussed the finance committee, and the only thing I'd add on that is that Susie didn't. Part of what really prompted this first quarter, these quarterly kind of finance committee meetings was a recommendation from the auditor that we have finance look regularly at budget to actual. So that's trying to, Susie being proactive and following the recommendations. first quarter, just hard to get a read on where you're headed when you've got no income and you have some funds that, just expenses aren't linear in the first quarter. So we'll have I think some meaningful take on it when we meet in February or so. Ad hoc Caltrans and Center for the Arts and other committee reports.
Nothing to report there at this point.
So let's have.
I have a question on Caltrans. As far as the keeping up with them about the relinquishment process, it seems like it might be good to have another one of those meetings, and maybe some of that stuff will be covered in the Main Street planning meeting, but I just want to make sure that
some of it will. So what we're trying to do right now, we being the collective LGC, City, and or I guess Tatiana, is trying to identify the designer who is in the Marysville office, and Mauricia doesn't even know who it is.
So, yet again, I would just like to maybe get together and make sure that, because one of the things we had decided at the last meeting was to send out our understanding of the timeline to all the different departments of Caltrans so that we know that we're all on the same page, and I just want to make sure that that is happening. I mean, we have a lot on our plates, but maybe in
I'll
January.
reach out to Charlie Fielder and try and.
Is he back?
Yeah, he was gone, wasn't he? I don't know. Or Mark or Matt. Let's see. Good point. So council member reports and recommendations.
Yeah, I did submit that grant for a feasibility study for a recreation district. My understanding is that the Board of Supervisors received 62 grant applications, and they have said that they're going to give each applicant an opportunity to address the board. I don't imagine they'll ever do this again. But, so I'm interested to know how many came from the 3rd district. I know that there was, I think Kids Club definitely put one in. I'm hoping that our local newspapers will do some digging on that. Once, I don't think any information is available at the moment, other than the 62.
Well, you can just talk to your supervisor and ask who.
How many?
Yeah.
Oh, I had an addendum on EDFC, I'm sorry. They did have a special meeting in order to approve a new loan that isn't in our vicinity, but unfortunately I missed that meeting because we didn't have the call-in number, but that happened last Thursday. And one of the things they are doing is promoting a lot of loans. They actually have a pretty good fund available for people who want to start up businesses and get loans. So if there are any of those out there, apply.
It'll be John's place, they'll need.
Yeah.
Good and welfare.
Two things. I was by the museum the other day and saw them beginning to install the Vietnam War Memorial, and it's going to be really nice. I mean, just the groundwork looks really good. Also, one of the other groups that I'm involved in, and so is Ron, is the Community Foundation of Mendocino County, and they do community impact grants. These are relatively small, $5,000, $10,000 grants, and that process, if you know of any nonprofits that are interested in applying for a grant, that's happening right now. I think they're due December 4th. So I would really love to see, we have a lot of worthy groups, including Frontier Days, for example. They haven't applied before. I think Trail probably has some needs that they have. So I'm encouraging people, if they need more information, they could probably reach out to Ron or myself, and we could put them in touch with who to apply to.
Actually, just to update you, I kind of resigned months ago. After 8 years, I figured it was time to step down.
Goals complete.
Well, I could provide that information if necessary.
Okay.
The museum is having its Heritage Lunch on November 7th. So
I think that's in our reading file also.
We will now recess to closed session. We have a conference with legal counsel, the existing litigation between the city and Remco Hydraulics.
And this is not an issue that involves the end use of the